Happy Halloween, booze and ghouls. My name is not Andy Heller, the resident fat dude of Fat Dude Digs Flicks. Instead, I am his Criterion Break co-host, Derrick Veurink, and I am here honored and excited to host the one day only Halloween edition return of the late, great Killer Countdown podcast on the Fat Dude Digs Flicks Network podcast feed. For those of you who aren't aware of what the Killer Countdown is, it was a sub podcast on the late great Backlot 605 podcast, in which hosts Blake Ginnathan and Casey Kelderman hosted and participated in draft style horror themed countdowns across the breadth of the genre. The last time we did one of these killer countdowns was in October 2020 for a special SuperCon line edition where the four players that you will soon be introduced to counted down the top 20 horror movies of the 1980s. And because you can't leave an opportunity alone for a good sequel, tonight those same players are here to give us their picks for the top 20 horror movies of the 1990s. Tubular boys. All right. So, with that in mind, I am going to go down the list here of our players. First off, the one that I mentioned already, the man behind Fat Dude Digs Flicks, my Criterion Break cohort, Mr. Andy Heller. How are you, good sir?
I am doing really well. I'm so very excited that we were able to get together to do this. Over the last month and a half, we have been talking trash. We have been cribbing notes. Like, we have just been plotting the course for this episode, and now it is here, and I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I'm super excited. Great group of guys here to hang out with tonight. And we're gonna have a ton of fun, even if we yell at each other at some point throughout this thing.
Well put, Andy. Our excitement and our nervousness are clearly embellished in this. All right. Next up, we have the co-founder of the aforementioned late Backlot 605 podcast, now working in local filmmaking, also recently executed the excellent SuperCon Film Festival at SuperCon 2022. Mr. Casey Kelderman, how are you, good sir?
We're back from the dead, boys. We're back. You can't keep a good slasher villain down, and so we're back. I just thought of this while we were sitting here of our wicked nicknames that we had on Killer Countdown and Slashlight. We need to think before the end of this of one for Andy and one for Derrick that are creepy as well.
Yeah. Ooh, challenge accepted.
Challenge in this already challenging podcast to keep Sam from playing the most ridiculousness that you can expect in a 1990s horror list.
What is the 90s horror equivalent to Baby's Day Out? I will find it.
That is
I'm
Baby
sure
Jesus,
it
right?
is just Baby's Day Out.
Son for number one.
It's from Dusk Till Dawn.
That voice you hear is the also co-host of Backlot 605, now currently the cartoonist of the online comic strip The Ghoul Fields, Mr. Sam the Damned Lens.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm so excited to be here. I've been waiting for this for ever since we floated the idea and everybody was like, yeah, let's do it. I've been like, all right, let's get this thing going. I'm so stoked. This is it's a family reunion, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reunion.
A family reunion for people who see each other weekly.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, the last piece of the puzzle here tonight, former Killer Countdown /Slashlight, that came out horribly, host, currently our fellow Criterion Break co-conspirator, Mr. Blake Ginnathan. How are you, sir?
Last and certainly least, I am doing really good.
Certainly not, mister.
All right. Now that we've got those out of the way, what I will do here to get things into play for our countdown is I will go over the rules that we have decided over the past couple of months for how this countdown is going to be executed. So first off, movies that officially qualify for this countdown. We will have 20 spots. Movies that will be on this list have to have been theatrically released movies between January 1st, 1990 and December 31st, 1999. That's one full decade. These movies must have been theatrically released in their country of origin, a rule that has been of quite some debate. So, Andy, unfortunately, I cannot let you play Spore Loose as you had so wanted. However, I will let you play the 1993 American remake starring Jeff Bridges and Sandra Bullock, if you choose.
Oh, yay. Blake, we're going to be so happy to have that one on the list.
It's definitely, get ready for it. It's coming. So
All right. And just to clarify, because these are theatrically released, we just have to make it clear, no made-for-TV movies. I'm sorry, Psycho 4 and The Birds 2. No direct-to-video movies. Sorry, most of the Full Moon Library. We're keeping it legit here tonight, so just getting that out there. Repeating a rule that we had on the 1980s Killer Countdown, we are only allowing one movie per horror franchise. For example, if one of these people tonight plays I Know What You Did Last Summer, you will not be able to play I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, much to the chagrin of the Brandy fans who are listening to this podcast right now.
They're going to want to turn this off.
Yes. However, we do allow...
Tonight, I will hunt you down next October.
That said, we do allow for multiple movies per director. So if somebody does play John Carpenter's Vampires, you can still play John Carpenter's Village of the Damned. We will let you do that somehow.
we might judge you, but you can do it.
Exactly. Finally, to reiterate a tradition here, each player will be given one stab, in which they will be able to eliminate someone's pick from this 1990s horror countdown draft. So use those stabs sparingly. All right. Just to recap
The
here.
weird stabbing motions going on in this Zoom chat are
Yeah,
It's
or-
not like
or-
this.
No,
Yes.
it's
More
above
like
the
this.
camera line, guys.
Not
Above
like-
the camera line.
Oh,
yes, it works.
I've been
great for
stabbing
an
all day. Then
I will
usually
say
wait to
it works.
stab at night.
It works totally great
I
for an
stab when I get
audio
time.
podcast. When you have just stabbing motions with no audio, it works great. So, all right. Prior to the start of recording this podcast, we determined the drafting order for our 4 participants tonight. The first thing I will reveal is prior to tonight, we had come to a consensus that in recognition of him hosting this Killer Countdown podcast on his podcast feed, and also because he has somehow not had a number 1 pick during any of these many countdowns over the years, we have collectively gifted Mr. Andy Heller with the number 1 pick tonight. So Andy will have to recap picks number 1, 6, 10, 14, and 20. The next up in the order was Blake, as picked via random envelope selection. He will have picks number 2, 8, 11, 12, and 17. In the number 3 seed is Sam. He has picks number 3, 7, 13, 16, and 18. And finally, Casey has picks 4, 5, 9, 15, and 19. So that is going to be our order. And we will start here shortly. Is there anything else that I'm missing here, gentlemen?
Not that I can
I don't think so.
Excellent. All right. Let's just get right into it. So, Andy, if you can direct message me your number 20 pick, please.
All right, here it comes, and I will state my case as soon as it's announced.
Uh-oh. Some controversy already?
All right. If I can just put on my best Clay Keller impression. All right. Andy has given me his pick. All right. And here we go. At number 20, Andy Heller has selected from the year 1994. Our first horror franchise entry on this list right off the bat. This is Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
All right, so I am going to talk about this. we committed a sin 2 years ago. We
Committed a sin
included
today.
we included Jason, we included Michael Myers, we included the Killbots, we included Ash Williams. Somehow we did not include Mr. 1980s horror Freddy Krueger. And I wanted to remedy that. And luckily, there was another Freddy movie that came out this decade outside of Freddy's Dead, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This is a great meta satire of the horror films that Wes Craven would later go on to perfect in something else. But I think this movie is just, it's fantastic. It has moments of humor in it. It's scary. It brings Freddy to life in probably one of his most terrifying incarnations because it feels tangible. Like Freddy from the Dream he's a dream Freddy. Sure, he can kill everybody, and if you have a nightmare, you're done for, but there's something about this Freddy that just feels raw and frightening. But I love this movie, and I wanted to make sure that I got it on here somewhere. And I think in the face of a lot of other horror movies that were released this decade, it's probably not the best, but it's at least one of the 20 best horror movies of the decade. And I think putting it at the top here at number 20 is a good spot for it. So Wes Craven's New Nightmare, that is my pick at number 20.
Excellent. Thank you for making your case so eloquently, Andy. I will go around the round table here to get the others' opinions. First off, Casey, are you planning on vetoing this or no?
No. I think what Andy said was spot on. Of we have this gaping hole in our 1980s list that it eats away at me every single day that we don't have Mr. Frederick Krueger on that list. And the fact that we get him on here, I think is perfect. I think it's one of the best sequels of the franchise. I think it's a perfect precursor to another Wes Craven movie we may talk about later. I also think it's just filled with really great performances and Easter eggs for Nightmare on Elm Street fans. I mean, you get Heather Langenkamp coming back, playing a version of herself in real life, and then kind of seeping back into the Nancy character towards the third act of this movie. I love the mixing of reality and fiction that the movie does. I also love young Miko Hughes in this movie. I think he's really great. There's a movie that kind of just missed the cut, Pet Sematary, that I think should have made a list, and I don't think we ever put it on a list, but at least we get our Miko Hughes fix here. As a Fred head, this is I think a perfect spot for it, because there is probably 19 other movies we can probably put above it, but it needs to be on this list because of our history with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies during these countdowns, and the fact that it's just a great movie overall. So no stab at all.
All right, no stabbing from Casey. Sam, how about you?
No, I'm actually kind of glad that it's played as low as it is, because I like this movie a lot. But I actually just rewatched it today before this podcast, because I hadn't seen it in quite a few years, and I think this is one of the best Freddy looks that we've ever gotten in this movie. I think the makeup is on point. This is like one of the scariest Freddy movie, like as far as Freddy himself, I would say. I think it drags at points in the movie, which kind of bring it down from perfection that a few of the other, in my opinion, that a few of the other movies in this franchise have. This is probably mid-tier of the franchise for me. But it's also a really great movie because it's a great franchise. So it needed to be on this list. I'm glad it's here and not higher necessarily. So solid start. Nice job, Andy.
All right, and finally, Blake.
Yeah, I must be the only one who's like really happy Freddy didn't make the 80s list. But there's not much I can really say that hasn't been said already. I think this is the best sequel in the series, and I love that they used the 1993 or 4 earthquake that actually happened in LA, and they put it into the movie to add that sort of like element of realism. And I also love that Wes Craven wore double venom double denim in this scene. So yeah, really good movie.
All right. So that locks it in there. Wes Craven's New Nightmare at number 20. And again, as was alluded to, we might see other 90s horror movies on this list for Mr. Craven, namely one Music from the Heart. But
Derrick, spoilers, man. Come on. I was gonna play that. Gosh.
I got to be cheap for Streep. So what can I say?
Terrifying Meryl Streep performance.
All right. With that said, we are moving on to the number 19 pick from Casey.
Oh, here we go.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I was afraid to hear shit like that. Yeah.
All right. As I was thinking today, I kind of felt we were probably going to get this referenced in some fashion. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. At number 19, Casey Kelderman has picked from the year 1993, director Kenny Ortega's Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus. A movie that, in my opinion, needs to be on this list. I know majority of this group probably thinks otherwise, but my argument for it is, one, I love this movie, and I know a lot of people, especially in this chat, do not. My argument for it is we should have a kids movie on this list, and I don't think there's a better kids movie that is eligible to make it on this list to represent that type of horror, the gateway horror, the movies that you grow up on at 6, 7, 8 years old, so you can watch New Nightmare, so you can watch another movie after that we'll maybe talk about other movies, but yeah, I think Hocus Pocus is a really great kids gateway horror movie. It is one I grew up on. It is a movie that just absolutely oozes the Halloween spirit for me. Whenever I think of fall and movies to put on, there's always three that pop into my head right away. It's John Carpenter's Halloween, Mike Dougherty's Trick or Treat, and Hocus Pocus. It just has that feeling. I mean, it's set in Salem, shot in Salem. The house that is the home to the two kids, I think, is just like my vision of like the perfect house ever. Like if I had a dream house, it'd be the house from Hocus Pocus. That is exactly where I would want to live. I think there's a lot of fun performances here. I think Doug Jones as Billy Butcherson is kind of the standout in terms of the horror category. He's also very funny in this role. He's obviously known for his body type, the way he can use his body, especially in Del Toro movies later on. And I think this is a great work of that. And it has a good musical number that they try to recreate in the sequel that I'm like, yeah, I know what you're doing, but you did it better last time.
They did it better in the sequel.
Hocus Pocus.
All right, Casey has laid down the hammer for Hocus Pocus. Let's just go straight to our resident Hocus Pocus dissident, Andy Heller, to get his thoughts on this.
Listen, it's very early in the game. I am not going to veto this. I'm not going to stab this one. This was a smart move by Casey to get this on the list here because I like to hold my vetoes for a while. Listen, when we get around to doing the countdown of the greatest horror or / Halloween movies of the 2020s, I will make sure that Hocus Pocus 2 makes that list because it is definitely the best movie in this franchise. No, I get the appeal. I get that, people love this one. I don't, but it is what it is. It's on the list, number 19. It's not better than Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but it's okay.
All right. Moving on from our not a fan, Andy Heller, to someone who has not even seen the movie yet, Mr. Blake Ginnathan.
It's true. I have not seen this, so therefore I cannot veto. I don't think it's really fair to do that. Also, I could not veto a movie with my lifelong love, Vanessa Shaw. Vanessa, if you're listening, please return my phone calls. This is embarrassing. Yeah, I've never seen this, so I can't say anything about it. So I'll let Sam talk.
All right.
I like this movie. I didn't have it on my list for this. Because I don't know, I don't have the nostalgia attachment to it. I didn't actually watch it until I was like a little bit older. And I think it has a certain charm to it. It's definitely of its time. Um, I like this movie. I'm kind of like Casey. I put it on every Halloween, but it's like not my. I don't know. I wouldn't put it on a top 20 in for a decade. But I think down here this low, it's fine. And like Casey said, it's nice to have some kids horror because really this is the only one that I can personally think of. And I was a kid in the 90s. So like, I mean, everything else was made for TV or something like that. It's all Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, that type of stuff. So I think
Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Exactly, yeah. Like that's the kids horror that I'd like to have on here. But since we have this stinking direct to video doesn't count rule, Hocus Pocus will do. So yeah.
I wanted to say, and this was something that I was thinking about yesterday, like as we were watching actually you and I, Casey, had started to have a conversation about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then I got to thinking that I feel like some people have like a Disney gap. Like when you're really, really little, you love Disney movies, and then when you get older, you like appreciate some of the newer ones, but like there's this gap of when we're coming of age where it kind of feels like we're not as in touch. Like everybody loves a Goofy movie, which I think is fine, but I don't have that attachment to a Goofy movie. I don't have the attachment to this. Pocahontas, Nightmare Before Christmas I really like, but I feel a little distanced from it. I feel like there's, to some people, there's this Disney gap, and I think maybe it was because it's that transitional period for me from like middle school to high school, where it's like, no, I'm too cool for this, I don't want to watch this. And I think if I were just either a year younger or something, maybe I would have been like, oh yeah, Hocus Pocus is the shit. But Vanessa Shaw, that's a great celebrity crush, Blake. Great.
Oh
great
man,
celebrity crush.
Stay away, Andy, please.
I know, I will. Yeah, don't worry, I'm good.
All right. With that, Hocus Pocus stays at number 19, a rare win for the Walt Disney Corporation. So good on them.
They finally got one.
Oh,
yes.
man.
Good for them.
All right.
Those underdogs.
Yes. All right. We are now moving on to pick number 18, which is from Sam. All right. Another, now that I see it, I am not surprised at all. We are getting this one out of the way as well. At number 18, Sam the Damned Lens has picked Frank Henenlotter's Frankenhooker.
Yes. So Frankenhooker was a recent watch. I only recently watched this within like the past year, and I instantly fell in love with it, and I've probably watched it maybe 4 or 5 times since. This movie is incredible. I'm a sucker for a good Frankenstein story. Frankenstein is my favorite Universal monster. I love, like, Mel Brooks. His Young Frankenstein is my favorite Mel Brooks movie. And Frankenhooker is so far my favorite Henenlotter movie, probably because it has that Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein connectivity, but it's also much more transgressive than those movies. It like goes to some uncomfortable places while also being like a very goofy, zany, balls to the wall horror comedy, complete with some oozy practical effects, like a glob of dismembered hooker body parts coming out of a cooler to drag a pimp to hell, and like all this kind of stuff. I mean, this movie's insane, guys, and I love it. And he's fallen out of public grace recently, but Bill Murray even said, if you're going to see one movie in the year 1990, it better be Frankenhooker. And say what you will about the man personally, but he is rather funny and has good comedic taste. So Frankenhooker is my number 18 pick. I figured it was safe here. I hope no one vetoes it.
All right, let's go down the marching list to see if it stays. First, Mr. Blake Ginnathan.
Yeah, this is a really fun movie. Not top 20 for me, but I mean, we at the same time, like if I think if we're making a list of like 20 movies that sort of represent a decade, like it doesn't hurt to have a movie that's sort of like this like small personal project that is like almost like a Gonzo midnight movie with tons of body parts and guts and stuff. So I think it's a really fun movie. It's not my favorite Henenlotter movie, but it's certainly a wild ride that, like Sam said, it's a really good, fun update of a classic story.
All right, Blake keeps it safe. Next up, Casey.
Yeah, my history with the movie is pretty similar to Sam's. I've only seen it in the last year. I haven't watched it 4 or 5 times after, just the one time. That doesn't mean I didn't like it, because I had a really good time with it. I like Blake said, I don't think it's my favorite Henenlotter. I still think Basket Case is the go-to Henenlotter if I'm going to put one on. But I do think it is a great send-up of the Frankenstein story. It is exactly what you would expect from a Frank Henenlotter Frankenstein story too. I also love that, this movie comes out in 1990. We're kind of on the tail end of like gross, grimy New York, which Henenlotter spends most of his time in his movies, which I think is just that is a straight up vibe that obviously you don't get after the city is cleaned up in the 90s and stuff. So kind of having this as the last little remnants of that we get here in the very early 90s is a nice little time capsule too. Yeah, I think this is a movie I wouldn't put on my personal 20, but I was fully expecting it, and I'm glad it's kind of on our bottom 5 instead of anything, top 15 or something like that.
I mean, personally, this is probably like a top 10 for me, but yeah. This is a collaborative list, so
Yeah.
I figured I'd work with y'all.
Also,
Yes.
we're all expecting it, so it's not
Yeah.
like a secret.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, Andy.
Yeah, I'm not going to stab this one. This is like Blake said, and I think Casey said it too. This is expected, and this is a Sam Lens movie, like just through and through, fun, kind of trashy, kind of silly, but just a good time. I don't love this movie like Sam does. I don't know that anybody loves this movie like Sam does, but it's fun, silly, easy way to pass an hour and a half. So yeah, good pick, and I think 18 is a perfectly fine spot for it.
All right, Sam stays at number 18 with Frankenhooker. Well done. All right, and with that, we now have our last participant making their first pick. Blake has already messaged to me his number 17 pick. And from the year 1991, from director Eric Red, I believe, Body Parts.
Yeah, Body Parts is a movie that lives sort of like in the same breadth as Frankenhooker, although, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. It just has a higher budget, so it's like a studio clean movie, but it still has that grimy feel to it. It's about this criminal investigator who gets into a car accident. He gets taken to the hospital. While he's there, his arm has to be amputated, and at the same time, a notorious serial killer is being put to death, and then it turns out that our hero, played by Jeff Fahey, gets the serial killer's arm, and he starts to do violent things with this arm. Turns out this guy's spirit is in his body parts, and then he slowly meets other people who have the body parts of the serial killer, and they are also doing crazy things. And then we find out that the guy is not dead and he wants his body parts back, and he has to sort of like fight off this serial killer. Also sort of like a Frankenstein movie. There is a Dr. Frankenstein character in the movie. I don't want to reveal what happens, because the sequence where we find out that this is happening is absolutely incredible. There is a sequence where one person handcuffs their arm to another person in another vehicle, and there's these two cars zooming through the streets of New York, and basically like they have to stay close, otherwise their arms will be ripped off. There's a lot of great sequences like that. It's a very gory movie, a lot of fun. So yeah, Body Parts, I played it a little low because I don't love it, but it's a kind of like a wild card pick.
All right, Blake making his case for Body Parts. Andy, we'll start with you on this one.
I have never seen Body Parts, so much like everyone else, when that happens, I'm going to kind of bow out. I remember the trailer for this though when I was younger, and I think the trailer freaked me out, and it's the one that I'd never gotten around to seeing. But while Blake was describing it, I was like, I have to remedy that, so it is now on my watch list, so I can hunt it down and check it out because it sounds great. And was it Jeff Fahey is in it?
Yep.
Yeah. I want to check it out. So no need to veto or stab it, but it's something to add to the watch list.
All right, Sam, your thoughts?
Very much the same as Andy. I've not seen this, but it sounds incredible. I, like everybody else on this call, indeed looked it up on Letterboxd as Blake was talking about it. I looked up and saw all of you looking at your phones as well. So, yeah, no, this sounds like a wild ride. This is the thing that I love about these countdowns is I know that, yeah, I've got a lot of blind spots. And so when you guys play stuff that's maybe like a deeper cut like this, all it means is like, hey, I have a new movie to put on the watch list. So I'm pretty pumped. This is cool.
All right, and Casey.
I, like Andy and Sam, have never seen this. Neither have I ever heard of it. So I'm very, very happy to not only discover a brand new movie, to have a brand new movie I've never heard of be on this list. Because I mean, if Blake's putting it here, I think I know exactly what type of movie we're going to be in for. And the fact that it is on the list is showing that this is a movie Blake especially wants people to hear about, seek out. And I think that's worthy of being on the list alone. And now has 3 people that need to convert to the body parts covenant.
I think what's funny is that we're all super like, oh, I've never seen this. Let it stay on the list, like in the bottom 10. But I think when it gets to the top 10, we'll be like, I've never seen this movie. No, it cannot be considered one of the best. I just feel like that title changed a little bit. But here, very friendly. I would really like to watch Body Parts. So I think I'm gonna.
All right, so we'll have a lot of extracurricular viewing after this countdown as the rest of this group watches Body Parts at number 17. All right, now we have Sam with the number 16 pick.
Okay, hold on. Y'all are making me reevaluate some of my picks just because, like,
You can't play Frankenhooker again, Sam.
that's the tough part. Do I go with another fun pick or do I start taking this list a little more seriously? That's the thing. You know what? I'm gonna go with one that might be a little bit of a wild card, but I love it. So.
All right, here we go.
This one.
All right, Sam has given me his number 16 pick from the year 1999. Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow.
Okay. I don't know what to read the room, but I'm going to give my spiel and then y'all can veto it if you want. But so this to me is one of the most underrated Tim Burton movies. It, with Sweeney Todd, is really the only time I feel he's gone full-blown horror, even though he has dabbled in it in the past. This is a Tim Burton slasher movie set in 1799, based on one of the greatest American folk tales ever. And it takes a lot of creative liberties with that, including having the horseman be a liaison of a witch who likes to cut her palm and dribble all over the backs of men she seduces. And there's a lot of like cool, spooky fall vibes in this. I'm a massive fan of crunchy leaf horror, and this has tons of crunchy leaves all over this movie. And that's a really poor excuse to put it on a top 20 list. Having a hard time articulating any deeper thoughts than that on this movie. But I do love it. It may be a little bit style over substance, but I think it's a quirky Johnny Depp performance. It stars one of my favorite scream queens, Christina Ricci, who's just incredible in it as Katrina Von Tussle. And yeah, I love this movie. It's cool. It's got Christopher Walken beheading people. So
All right, Sam making his case for Sleepy Hollow. Casey, we'll start with you.
So when Sam first said that Sleepy Hollow was his pick here, I gave a face of hesitancy. I don't love this movie. I've only seen it the one time, but the Legend of Sleepy Hollow story is one of my favorite horror stories ever. I was obsessed with it as a kid. I watched the Disney animated shorts over and over and over every Halloween.
Adaptation, yes.
It still is for sure. We have a giant headless horseman statue in our kitchen. It is a story that kind of means a lot to us in our house. But after you said it and was kind of going through your thoughts on the movie, I'm starting to agree that this should be on the list. Not that it's one of the 20 best movies, not that it's the number 16 best horror movie of the 1990s, but the fact that I don't know if we'll get another Tim Burton movie on this list or another Christina Ricci movie on this list. And I think those two names alone help encapsulate the 1990s horror as a whole. So I think it is important that we have them on the list, even if the movie itself that they're working on is not that great. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this. My biggest problem, though, is our main performance, Johnny Depp's Ichabod Crane. He just does not feel like Ichabod Crane. He feels like Johnny Depp playing a kooky, weird character.
Johnny Depp's career.
Yeah, and this really feels like the start of that, where he's starting to play those weird characters instead of a character. But besides that, I think all the other performances are really fun. I love that we get the older group of guys in this movie. I think they're all a lot of fun in this. I love Christopher Walken as the headless. Christopher Walken as the headless horseman, I think, is an inspired choice that totally works in this movie. I think it should be on here for Burton and Ritchie, even if the movie shouldn't. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not going to stab it. That's what I'm getting at.
All right. We will move on to Blake.
I think this is one of the 2 or 3 watchable Tim Burton movies, so I'm okay with it being on the list. I actually really like this movie a lot. I love all the, it's really gory and really violent. I love the images of the horseman flying out of the tree. Like Casey, you mentioned it's great to have Christopher Walken as the headless horseman. The only problem with that is if he's headless, we don't get to see Christopher Walken that much, but I agree in principle. I like this movie a lot, so I'm happy this is here.
All right, Andy, what say you?
I have been wrestling with this a lot since it was announced as the number 16. I'm not going to stab it. I'm gonna leave it here, and I think it's fine. And I do think one of the reasons why it should definitely be here is it's beautiful. Like, this is a beautifully shot movie. Like, it is just the art direction on this thing, production design is fantastic. And I think because of that, I can overlook the things that I have problems with, which is Johnny Depp. But yeah. I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
I also think we're not going to get a lot of gothic horror movies on this list, other than the big one we're all talking we know about. But so I think in that respect, it's a good pick as well.
Yeah. So I'm I was looking up to the sky to try and think in my head, do I want to keep this? Do I want to get rid of it? I was listening to everything everybody said and I was wrestling with it. But I do think for me, the production design of this thing, it's still going back and watching it today, it's still beautiful. So that wins out for me over any of my problems. So yes, we'll leave Sleepy Hollow here. But as Sam said, and Casey said too, the best Sleepy Hollow adaptation is still the Disney one. I love that one. So yeah,
absolutely. Good. And not that I need to defend this place on the list even more, but it is really timely of 99 because it literally deals with the turn of the century from the 17 to the 1800s. And especially that little coda at the end where there's that uncertainty of what's to come. I don't know. I dig this movie a lot. I think it's weird and wild, and it's one of the few Burton movies that takes some like genuine risks and pays off. At least for me. So yeah.
All right, Tim Burton's Y2K movie, Sleepy Hollow, stays on the list at number 16. We are now 1/4 of the way through this list, so I will just give a quick recap of what's been drafted so far. At number 20, Andy picked Wes Craven's New Nightmare. At number 19, Casey picked Hocus Pocus. At number 18, Sam picked Frankenhooker. At number 17, Blake picked Body Parts. And at number 16, Sam has just picked Sleepy Hollow. And we still have all 4 stabs on the board, ready to be disseminated here at any minute. So, with that, we'll move on to Casey for the number 15 pick.
All right, let's get those stabs out.
All right, we have another franchise on the list now. From the year 1991, Casey has picked Child's Play 2.
Stab.
And Sam has minced no words here. Sam has played his stab.
You can talk about it if you want, Casey, but yeah,
No, we'll see if it comes up again.
we'll see.
Oh boy, what do I play now?
Child's Play 3.
Don't
Shit.
do it! Oh my god!
Oh no, I don't know what to play here anymore. I was using that legitimately probably to draw out a stab,
Look at
or
that gameplay.
make sure another movie doesn't get a little higher on this list. So at least it did one of those two things.
God damn it!
Well, I know it's going to get played later, so I'm going to play it now.
Okay.
Ooh, Scream
Okay.
2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's
All right.
It's going to show up later.
All right. Casey has provided me. Casey has provided me with a new pick. All right, this is quite different. From the year 1998, Casey has picked Ronnie Yu's Bride of Chucky.
Bride of Chucky, my number 2 favorites Child's Play movie. You can probably guess what my favorite actually is. But if we're going to talk about 1990s movies, 1990s horror pop culture icons, there might not be anyone bigger besides a guy with a white mask that we'll talk about later than Chucky himself. So Bride of Chucky, 1998, Ronnie Yu, the horror auteur that he is, doing Bride
One
of
of the
Chucky.
greatest horror directors of all time.
What's that?
One of the greatest horror directors of all time.
He made two
A
of
master
my
of horror.
two of my favorite schlocky slasher movies. So I'll give the guy credit for that. Yeah, I think this is one of the most fun entries of the franchise. This is really where we get into the Don Mancini-isms. They really start to shine here in Bride of Chucky. We get the introduction of Tiffany. So the movie takes place obviously after Child's Play 3, really has nothing to do with the first 3 Child's Play movies. Andy is not involved at all. We get the introduction, like I said, of Tiffany, who is played by the great Jennifer Tilly in this movie and has become a horror icon in her own right, who resurrects Charles Lee Ray into the Chucky body while eventually finding herself put inside a doll's body. And we get the kind of iconic now duo of Chucky and Tiffany, the killer dolls in this movie. I think all the humans in this movie are pretty unsufferable. Like, they're all horrible. Like, I don't like any of them, but I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to like Chucky and Tiffany. And that's where I think Child's Play 2 does the series a little better, because I'm still rooting for Andy in that movie. I still want him to win over Chucky. Here I'm like, Chucky, Tiffany's, kill them all. Who cares? I think it has some of the most fun kills in this movie. We get some weird stuff in the sequels after this, but I think this is kind of that nice little balance of slasher and comedy mixed together here in Bride of Chucky.
All right, Casey explaining his case for Master of Horror Ronnie Yu's Bride of Chucky. Let's go straight to Sam for his immediate response.
So here's the thing. Child's Play 2 is probably like, okay, it's objectively a better movie than Bride, but Bride had the cultural zeitgeist of the like late 90s. I mean,
You still go into a Spencer store and you're going to see those Chucky and Tiffany dolls that were sitting on the shelves in 1998.
And it's Bride.
No one bought them.
It's that like poster of the two of their faces and Chucky being all scarred up that was seared into my brain as a kid going to the movie store and looking through all of the horror section. The introduction of Jennifer Tilly to the series gave it like such a life force that has carried this franchise through. She might not be in the two sci-fi direct-to-video installments as much, but after Tilly, like Don Mancini really started leaning into the campiness, like really started leaning into the queer aspects of Chucky and the lore. And without it, we don't have, maybe people don't thank it for Seed, but I do. I love Seed. And like without Bride, this franchise just is dead in the water after 3, which was a pretty middling effort. Jennifer Tilly's the original Dwayne Johnson. She's franchise Viagra in this. And I love her. She gives the best performance in she might give my favorite performance from a 90s horror movie in this movie. She's hilarious. Her voice work is tremendous once she gets transferred into the doll. Like she's the star of this show, and she nails it. And yeah, this movie means so much to me. I love it. I'm glad this is the one on the list. Child's Play 2 is, like you said, Casey, it's probably the best one in the franchise, but Bride is a personal favorite. And I think it's the most 90s of the Chucky movies, and I really wanted it on here.
All right. Sam on board with the Bride of Chucky pick. Andy, what say you?
Don't disrespect Jennifer Tilly like that by comparing her to The Rock. Like that's just she deserves so much better than that.
I'm just saying she did it before him and better.
Sure. Yeah, there you go. So I got to be honest with you. The Child's Play franchise is not one that I'm very well versed in at all. I have seen the original film, and that's it. So I will need to, I'll need to get through my Child's Play. And I hear the TV series Chucky is fantastic. So I've seen the
right now.
Yeah, and I've heard I did see the remake, which I liked, even though I know a lot of people did not. But it's different. It's a very different Child's Play concept. I'm not gonna veto or stab this. But yeah, this reminds me that I need to do what I planned on doing this year, which is to watch the Chucky movies. So I have to get on that. So yeah, it stays for me.
All right, Andy calling his shot for his Child's Play marathon. Be on the lookout for that. And finally, Blake.
So just to reiterate rules, if this stays on, no other Chucky movie can make it, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So I like this movie a lot. I'm a big fan of the series. I think 2 is the better movie by far.
Yeah.
But it's really funny you guys brought up The Rock, because I think Chucky's face turn is like the best one since The Rock when he left the Nation of Domination. But
probably the same summer, 98.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah. I mean, I love Jennifer Tilly. I'm not going to veto this. I want to wait for really egregious shit in the top 10. So, yeah.
All right, Chucky stays and Chucky slays. Bride of Chucky at number 15. Andy, you have the number 14 pick. All right, and Andy has given me very specific scripting instructions for this reveal. All right. Andy has selected from Master of Horror, Peter Jackson.
No.
Dead Alive. Dead Alive.
So we did a 90s countdown very early on the Backlot 605 show. And the movie that I got a lot of shit for playing was Peter Jackson's The Frighteners. And I still love The Frighteners. I do. I think it's fun. But if I were to consider it one of the top 10 now, definitely not. Not even the top 20. A movie that does belong, though, in the top 20 is probably one of the zaniest, goriest, just delightful New Zealand humor, Dead Alive. This is a crazy, crazy movie. I have discovered this year that I am not as big of a fan of Evil Dead as I thought I was. But Dead Alive out Evil Dead's Evil Dead. I just think it's,
Get
it's
the
not
fuck
as
out of here.
not as supernatural, but I think I like what it's doing. Dead Alive is one of those that it's just for me, it was kind of a coup to be able to find it back in the day on DVD because of how gory it is and how trimmed down. I think because I worked at Blockbuster and we rented out the rated version where it was quite trimmed. So to find the unrated DVD back in the day was a big deal. And hopefully that 4K remaster that Peter Jackson has talked about for the last couple of years will be coming somewhere down the road. But yeah, I just think this movie is a trip. I really enjoy it. And I think if we're going to have kind of a silly, to go right after Bride of Chucky, another silly horror movie, I think a gory, silly horror movie like this is the way to go. Dead Alive's my 14.
All right. Since he had his notable Evil Dead outburst, I will shift it to Blake right away.
I think this is one of the I really like this movie a lot. This is one of the best midnight movies ever made. It's probably the goriest movie ever made. I mean, how many movies do you know where a character holds up a lawnmower and just walks through a house cutting up zombies? I mean, there's a giant rat in the movie. There like and besides all that, there's a dinner sequence where like someone like spits up or like pauses, and that's probably the grossest thing in the movie. And I mean, listen, I love PJ's early stuff. Bad Taste is one of the great midnight movies. Meet the Feebles is the best Muppet movie ever made. I'm happy to see this.
All right, Casey.
Yeah, I've only seen this movie the one time. It was on a and I still have it, VHS tape from Pop and Go Video here in Sioux Falls. So still the only way I've ever seen Dead Alive is on glorious VHS, which I kind of feel might be the only way to watch this until an eventual restoration comes out. I'm like, that's the way to watch it. This movie, not to show my cards for the rest of this list, it's the best Evil Dead movie of the 90s. And I think this really encapsulates that horror comedy mix. So much gore and laughs throughout this movie. Like I said, I've only seen it the one time, but that lawnmower scene in the third act is like seared into my brain, like the lawnmower blades have cut into it.
He's the real lawnmower man.
He is the real lawnmower man. I think this should be on the list. I'm actually really surprised by our list so far of how zany all of our picks are, which I think is a-okay, because the 1990s were a zany decade for horror. So let's throw out all the zany picks like Brain Dead, Dead Alive.
All right, finally, Sam.
So Peter Jackson for me started with Fellowship of the Rings. I still have not seen anything prior to Lord of the Rings of his.
Oh my
watch list. I'm aware, like you guys talking about this now makes me think that the first movie from this countdown I'm probably going to put on this week is Dead Alive.
Highly recommend Heavenly Creatures as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love Peter Jackson's work. The Lovely Bones was bad, but that was an outlier, I feel like, because most of everything I've seen of his I've really enjoyed. So I'm excited to dig into some of his early horror stuff because I know you guys have been singing his praises for quite some time. So, yeah.
All right, Dead Alive stays at number 14. Peter Jackson, if you are listening to this, if you could stop hanging out with Paul and Ringo for a bit and get these early movies out in 4K editions, that would be
I want
super
my
swell.
4K now.
Do you guys think
Yes.
Paul McCartney has ever seen Dead Alive?
He's watching it with Ringo.
They love it, I'm sure.
Oh, that'll be a great DVD extra. Excellent. All right. All right. Sam has the number 13 pick.
I'll see how you guys react to this. I'm really not playing these to like,
Yeah.
I promise.
I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're not. Yeah.
All right. A real change the pace here. This is great. All right. From the great year of 1999. From director Steve Miner, it is
Ooh.
Lake Placid.
Okay, you guys, here's the thing. I know this is high, but I have 3 picks in the bottom 10. This is why I love the spot that I am in. You can veto this if you want, but I had to play Lake Placid, and here's why. The 90s featured a glut of films that were clearly inspired by like 50s monster movies. And Lake Placid is among the best of those movies. You have a lot of them. You have like Deep Blue Sea and Anaconda and like all these like, oh, they're creatures, but they're like bigger or they're advanced or whatever. And to me, Lake Placid is the best. The giant animatronic alligator is incredible, even when it only has, I don't know, I think it has like less than 10 minutes screen time actually in that entire movie, but it's used effectively. And I'm going to compare Lake Placid to Jaws, and I can already hear me losing the room. Because the thing about Lake
You already
Placid
lost
is
us, Sam.
in Creature Mayhem, it makes up for it with a very funny cast of characters. Oliver Platt is just hamming it up in this movie. I love Betty White and her a grandmotherly nature towards the beast of Lake Placid. There's just something about this movie that hits all the right notes for me. And I feel like this type of creature feature schlock should be represented on this list because it was a big chunk of movies in the 90s. And so that's why I've played it, albeit a little high, but still a worthy pick on this list, I think. So Lake Placid.
All right. We have Lake Placid from the David E. Kelly Empire on this list. Casey, we'll start with you.
My God. Okay. I like Lake Placid. I like it a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun watching it. It's one of those horror movies that I was allowed to watch right around this time when it came out. One of the few movies that we'd be able to talk about that I saw actually as a kid. So I do at least have a bit of nostalgia for it. But at 13, I think it's way too high at number 13. Bottom 3, I think would be fine. Yeah, I like this movie a lot though. I like Anaconda more. If we are going to throw out those types of, animal attack 90s movies, I think there is a better version of this movie that now that we only have 12 picks after, I'm afraid won't make it. That does that monster movie stuff much better than Lake Placid. I'm not going to veto it. I don't think Sam would play it higher, but I'm kind of worried what he would play instead.
You shouldn't be. The rest of the list is all bangers. Not that Lake Placid isn't. Lake Placid is a banger, but
All right. To further debate the bangerness of this movie, we'll go to Blake.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I lean Case's way. I really don't like this movie.
I like this movie.
Okay, so yeah, I just don't connect with this movie. I think there's like some really funny, like clever lines in the script that I can't recall them, but I remember like thinking like, oh, that's a really funny, like smart line of dialogue. A lot of them from Oliver Platt, some from Bill Pullman. 90s crush Bridget Fonda is in this. She's really good. I never got the Betty White like appeal, so like I think she kind of sucks in this movie. For 80 minutes, like this is a really boring movie. I checked my watch so many times watching this movie earlier this year. So I'm not gonna veto it. I don't really care for it. So
All right. Andy, we'll see if he can leaven things up here a little bit.
I don't care for this movie. it's
I am shocked. Like, I'm
it's
shocked that this
fine.
is actually the reaction. Like, I didn't expect it to be this.
Here's the
I
thing.
thought-
Here's the thing. Like there are movies that are terrible, like just terrible, that have no place on this list. And then there are movies that definitely belong on this list. This movie is right in the middle, like right in that spot of like, oh, it exists. And this movie totally exists. Like movie is
it definitely
totally a
does.
movie.
Yeah, it definitely exists.
God. If it were in the bottom 3, this would be an easy like, no, I'm not gonna veto it. But it is number 12, which means we can only have 12 more movies on this
13.
list.
13.
Oh,
We're at
13.
Yeah.
God. But like, I don't want to get rid of my veto, and then in the top 10, like something really egregious come up, like that word that Blake used. I love it. Oh God.
I genuinely don't see that happening.
Sorry, Sam. I don't trust you.
That's some solid stuff here, guys.
Sam, this is your lucky day.
Oh,
Lake Placid will stay on the list.
Lake Placid.
This movie is totally fine. I don't connect with it either. Bridget Fonda's great. Bill Pullman's great. Oliver Platt's great. I do get the Betty White of it, and I think she tells somebody to suck her dick in this movie, which that's always funny when an older lady says suck my dick. I'm on board.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll stay.
can we introduce a new rule and Sam can change the position of his? Because Frankenhooker's a better 13.
Yeah, I'm surprised by this. Lake Placid is literally placid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
A
mean,
movie that exists.
I don't have a veto, so I can't move this off the list. But you guys could. I genuinely did not play this to draw out vetoes, though. I'm shocked that you all don't like it this much. Yeah.
It's not that we don't like it, we just don't
Sam,
care.
I like the movie and I'm thinking of vetoing it.
Yeah, I get that. This movie rules for me. I don't know. I have a different experience.
There is no movie we have less of an opinion of.
Than the movie we haven't all seen.
Yeah, you're right. I put body parts on here again.
All right, that was a roller coaster, but after it all happened, Lake Placid is staying on the list at number 13. Whew, that was intense. All right, on to Blake for the number 12 selection.
Oh, I wasn't even ready. Oh man, what should I do?
List is insane, guys.
Well, hold on to your butts.
Is that a reference to the movie you're about to play?
Nope. All right, you got to give me a second here. I didn't even realize it was my turn.
You better stay on the ball because you've also got the number 11 pick.
Yeah, I was ready for that one.
All right, here we go. All right. From the great land of Canada, Blake has selected for his number 12 pick, Vincenzo Natali's Cube.
Yeah, Cube is a really interesting movie. It's sort of like Saw before Saw became a big thing. Basically, if people haven't seen it, it's about this group of strangers. They all wake up in this weird contraption where they're all in like these rooms, and they don't know how they got there. And the entire movie takes place in these rooms that are all cubes. And they slowly they slowly start to figure out that there's these booby traps that if they do something wrong, they'll get killed, and it could be like some have lasers, some have like these really sharp wires that move, and it's just about these people who have to sort of figure out why they're there, and they all have their own histories with why they're there, and they got to figure that out. And it sort of becomes like the same way they don't trust each other. I love it because it's different than anything else that really came out in that decade. And I love a movie that really just never explains itself and sort of has these people that never really figure out why they're there. And so I'm doing Cube.
All right. Andy, since you're the only one in the group that I know has watched this movie, I will start with you.
I love this movie. This is one of my favorites, my favorite stories to tell about watching movies with my younger brother. I worked at Blockbuster when this came out, and I rented it. Started watching the movie. It did the first kill scene. I stopped the movie. I ran to the other room. I grabbed my little brother. I'm like, hey, we're gonna watch this movie together. I brought him in to watch the first sequence, and he was like, this is gross. I love it. So we both sat down and just were enthralled with this movie that never really, I mean, some of the kills are shocking, but they never really get back up to that level. It is such a story, a story of paranoia, I think, more than anything else. And I think that's why it's super effective for me, because it's like they don't trust each other and they don't know where to turn. It is an excruciatingly claustrophobic movie. Not just because of the space, but because of the people around you. You fight wanting to know why all this is happening, and it doesn't leave you with a really satisfactory explanation at the end. But I think for once in my life, that's perfectly satisfying here. This movie's great. Awesome choice. One that I completely forgot about. I'm glad that you included it on the list.
All right, Casey, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a movie that when I was kind of doing research on what might be played here, that this is one that I had on my list in terms of what might be played. I've seen this movie before, and it's probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. I know I was in high school. It was probably during a movie night with friends, but I remember nothing about this movie. So I don't feel like I have enough to say about this movie, whether it should stay or not to be on this list. It is one of those movies that I feel like I just every single year say I need a rewatch and just kind of refresh my mind on this movie. But yeah, I think it should be on this list in terms of movies that as a consensus are some of the best of the 90s and are kind of out of the box picks, especially here in the top 15. I think it's a good spot for it, and one that I think is a good recommendation for people to go back to, like myself, that need to rewatch or watch for the first time.
All right, Sam.
I'm pretty much the exact same as Casey. I know I watched this very early on in my horror journey at a sleepover. I don't
Were we
remember
at the same sleepover, Sam?
It all makes so much sense.
When Blake played it, I'm like, God, I feel like I've definitely I've seen this, and I looked it up. I'm like, yeah, I've seen this. I don't remember a whole lot about it. So I couldn't tell you one way or another. I do know that this is one that's very highly regarded, and I probably should rewatch it soon. So I've got no problem with it being here.
All right, Cube stays at number 12. Way to go. All right. I just also want to mention the sequel, if only because it has one of the most awesome titles, Cube 2, Hypercube. Gets right to the point. All right. As I mentioned earlier, Blake also has the number 11 pick as well. And Blake has provided me with a very Blake pick. From the year 1992, from Mr. David Lynch. We are talking Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about how David Lynch is as an actual horror director, and I kind of I can understand that, but I don't really agree with it. And I think this is the one movie where he really leans into the horror. for people who haven't seen it, so Twin Peaks came out in the 90s as a TV show, or I'm sorry, 1990 as a TV show, hugely popular, like was like the zeitgeist for a couple of years. And like Who Killed Laura Palmer, and you find out, I think you find out in like the second season, before this movie. I could be wrong, but this is a prequel to the TV show, so you do find out who kills her. But it's just about Laura Palmer as who she is as a human being, as a high school prom queen, and what she goes through, like doing drugs and fornicating with boys in her school. But you also like really discover what like trauma women go through in terms of like abuse and sexual abuse, and sometimes that comes from family. Sometimes it comes through just adjacent people in their lives. And I think this is one of the few movies to really like get into the mental state of a woman who suffers from sexual abuse. And I think in terms of like, we want to talk about like the horror side of things, there are some sequences in the movie that are just downright terrifying. There's a sequence where there's a character that's well known whose name is Bob. Bob represents the evil in this reality, this world. And there's a sequence where he sneaks into her room as she's sleeping, and there's strobe lights going off. There's no sound, and it's just one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. So I'm kind of going a little arty with Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
All right. Blake making his case for his man Lynch. All right. Andy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I still feel bad that I have not seen The Return yet, because everything Twin Peaks prior to that is like that's David Lynch for me. I'm not going to veto this. It's crazy. Just a wild series and a wild movie to kind of cap off the series. It's fun to kind of get a look back at the history of these characters, this place, this world before the series began, but then to kind of know how everyone is fated to be. This is a Blake pick, and I am not gonna veto it because it's excellent. I probably would have it a little bit higher on the list. That's just me, but it's a great movie. So
well, you got a veto, so
I'm not going to not higher, not moving the other way. I mean, moving like towards the, towards the bottom. Still in the top 20, but a little lower, I guess, down the list.
Okay.
But yeah, I love Twin Peaks, so I'm happy to have this here, and I need to check out The Return as soon as I can.
All right, Sam.
So I am a huge blind spot for me is David Lynch. I have not seen Twin Peaks, but from everything that I've heard, yeah, this is a Blake pick, and I will probably check out Twin Peaks at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, so yeah.
All right, and Casey.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. David Lynch is a massive blind spot for me. I've never seen Twin Peaks, so I have no room to say if this should or should not make the list. So I will not be stabbing.
All right, pretty easy save for Mr. Lynch. And with that, we have completed the bottom half of the top 20. So to recap once again, number 20, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 19, Hocus Pocus. Number 18, Frankenhooker. Number 17, Body Parts. Number 16, Sleepy Hollow. Number 15, Bride of Chucky. Number 14, Dead Alive. Number 13, Lake Placid. Number 12, Cube. And number 11, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. All right. Just as a breather before we get into the second half, any general thoughts on the list thus far and how you're feeling going into the final 10?
It's very us.
I would be curious from the guys who did a predictive list as to what would appear on the list, how they're doing so far, because I feel like I couldn't have seen this most of this coming.
So what I'll say here is, 2 weeks ago Blake provided me with his picks for what you other three guys would select on this list. So he gave me the 15 spots that weren't his. They aren't in any ranked order. He just gave me a list of titles. So far, Blake has gotten only 2 titles right.
Yep.
On that
Yep.
list.
Yep.
Are,
Yep.
are they both Sam's movies too?
Nope. One's
One
Andy's,
is.
I believe.
Okay.
I think one's Andy's.
The two. I'll just reveal what he has successfully picked thus far. He did pick Frankenhooker, and he did pick New Nightmare. Everything else is very much.
I will say, I thought I thought Casey was going to pick New Nightmare. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right.
I think our 13 through 20 is chaotic.
Yeah.
Very.
At best.
Very.
Yeah. Now with Blake's 2 picks, I think we're starting to enter a territory where it's like, all right, we had our fun. Let's get to the serious shit.
Now we're buckling in.
That's what I had my veto for. All right.
All right. And with that, let's get down to some serious shit because Andy has the number 10 pick. All right. And things don't get much more prestigious than this because we have our first Oscar Best Picture winner on this list. At number 10, Andy has selected from Jonathan Demme, 1991's The Silence of the Lambs.
Listen. This movie is exquisite. This movie is a horror movie. It is terrifying. It is a psychological horror movie, but also features a monster, a misunderstood monster who murders people in Buffalo Bill. He's got some issues. But also Hannibal Lecter is just this psychotic genius. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I just love this movie so much, and it can always be part of the debate as to whether or not it's a horror movie. I'm gonna say it is. Like I feel like it is. I feel like there is terror afoot here. There's another movie that I probably am not going to end up playing on this list that I think people think is less of a horror movie, more of a detective noir. But I also think that's a horror movie. But this one is just like
horror movie.
Yeah, this movie is just, I think this is exceptional. Great performances. I know that the conversation can be had now that who is the best Hannibal Lecter. And I think every answer to that, except for the actor who played him in Hannibal Rising, would probably be correct. But for me, Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter is just, in such a short amount of screen time, he left a lasting impression of just like methodical genius, methodical evil. I love this movie. Personally, I would have played it higher, but I think to kind of avoid a lot of debate, I wanted to sneak it in on the top 10, so I am content with putting it here at number 10.
All right, Andy with his impassioned case for The Silence of the Lambs. Sam, we'll start with you on this one.
I'm with you. This was on my list too. I love this movie. It is one that I haven't watched in a while, but it's one that I really haven't needed to because it's seared into my brain. Like there are moments of this movie that even though I haven't seen it in, probably 6 or 7 plus years, I'm never gonna forget, like Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter is one of the greatest horror performances of all time. Jodie Foster's incredible in this. They're just, whole cast top to bottom is exquisite. The direction is tremendous. The night vision scene with Buffalo Bill is 100% one of the scariest horror sequences ever. Like it's tremendous. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind that this is a horror movie. I'm shocked it's not higher on this list, to be totally honest. So I'm good with it.
All right, Casey.
Full transparency, Silence of the Lambs was my number 2 on my personal list. I love this movie. I think it is, like I said with Hocus Pocus, there are these movies that just, to me, ooze fall and Halloween, and Silence of the Lambs is one of those movies too, whether it's trying to intentionally do that or not, but it has this very fall atmosphere to this entire movie, especially with that opening with Jodie Foster training at the academy and running through the forest and stuff. It is very much in the fall time. Yeah, this movie is terrifying. You have that night vision scene with Buffalo Bill, but I think really any scene with Buffalo Bill in this movie is terrifying. I like to now not make fun of, but like quote the put the lotion in the basket scene. But that's terrifying when you think of it. There is this young woman in this hole in the ground in this guy's basement, yelling at her, screaming at her to put lotion on her skin because he wants the best skin possible so he can wear it later. How messed up is that? How horrifying is that? And I think Buffalo Bill is more terrifying than Hannibal Lecter in this movie because he's outright the villain, where Hannibal Lecter we're not necessarily rooting for, but we're like, yeah, we need information from you. We're with Jodie Foster. We need to be on this guy's side, though he eats people. Yeah. So again, his breakout scene I think is also pretty terrifying when he just bites a guy's face and eats it. Like that's terrifying. The ending is incredible. I'm having a friend for dinner. It's a great just end line to the movie. Overall, incredible performances. This is one of the best horror movies of the 1990s.
All right, Blake. I would never ever call this a horror movie, but I'm not gonna veto it because I know it's a classic. I love this movie. I think this is a great movie. This is probably the only George Romero we're gonna get on the list, so I think that's pretty cool. I love the cinematography from Tak Fujimoto. I could never veto a movie that has the song Goodbye Horses in it. I think that's just one of the best pop songs ever recorded by anyone. But yeah, not a horror movie for me. So I'll just leave it with that.
All right. So it is still safe. The Silence of the Lambs at number 10.
If this was played higher, I would veto it, but I'll leave it here because I know it would get paid. I know it would have been played later. So
yeah.
All right. So we've had 2 consecutive Criterion Collection selections on this list. We'll see if Casey keeps it going with his number 9 pick.
It should be though.
Trash it up.
I could make a case for this being in the Criterion Collection if we're being honest. As a pure piece of 1990s pop culture from the year 1999, Casey has selected
Idle Hands.
Stephen Sommers' The Mummy.
Yep.
The Mummy. Again, I referenced earlier some of the movies I was able to watch as a kid. This is definitely one of those where I vividly remember as a kid watching The Mummy and The Mummy Returns over and over and over again at 7, 8 years old, and just being absolutely enthralled with them. I mean, Brendan Fraser in this movie, portraying this Indiana Jones type buffoon who kind of just stumbles into this caper of event that is a remake of the classic Universal Monsters movie of The Mummy, and it's it's still the best Universal Mummy movie that they've ever made. I think this movie is just incredibly funny, filled with just really fun performances throughout this entire movie. I just rewatched it and I kind of forgot how much this movie is just like breezes through everything, where you're just following this fun adventure for 2 hours and it's just nonstop go. Such a blast. The Beatles Under the Skin as a kid I thought was like the coolest thing ever. I think the mummy effects still for 1999 hold up pretty well in this movie. Returns not so much, but this movie are still pretty damn great. I think Imhotep is a great villain in this movie. I think this has to be on this list. I think right here in sort of the middle placement is a really good spot for The Mummy.
All right, The Mummy at number 9. Sam, we'll start with you.
I mean, who doesn't love The Mummy, right? This is the classic movie. For some reason, I did not have it on my list. I don't know how I missed this. I'm glad someone remembered it, so thank you, Casey. Because this movie is incredible. I think like Casey, the Beatles scene made an impact on me as a kid, but in maybe a different way. I definitely didn't think it was awesome. That was nightmare fuel for me. But yeah, no, I love this movie. It's great.
All right, Blake.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful movie. It's just a big, dumb, fun studio action adventure movie in the desert that sort of just like, it's like, how big can we go? And it goes really big. Also, I just want to shout out Kevin J. O'Connor, who is wonderful in this movie. Also could potentially make it again. Actually, thinking about it, he has like 2 or 3 movies that are all bangers that could make this list. And of course, this is sort of like when we get introduced to movie star Rachel Weisz.
Mm-hmm. Childhood crush for sure in this movie.
All right, Andy.
This is definitely the best cinematic version of The Mummy, even compared to, okay, so the best universal version of The Mummy, even compared to the Boris Karloff one, which is a snooze fest. Oh God, I hate to say that about the classic Universal monster movies, but good Lord, that one is a struggle. Like, especially compared to all the other ones, like it is just tough. The Monster Squad Mummy kind of rocks though, but this is great. This is a fun movie, fun action adventure in the like same wheelhouse as Indiana Jones. This would be where I would do the debate that I never like to be a part of. But is it really a horror movie? Like I feel like it's an action adventure movie more than is a horror movie. But I'm not gonna stab it. Like, it's so much fun. I have nothing but fond memories of this movie. Yeah, this is just a blast. Mummy Returns is not as good, but by a long
Still
shot.
fun.
But yeah, still fun. Mostly ruined by the ruiner of movies, The Rock. Listen, I've got a personal vendetta against Dwayne right now.
A lot of us do.
Yeah. But I think this one is just a ton of fun, and I could watch it anytime. Like it's one of those where I feel like I can put it on whenever and just have a great time. So yeah, it'll stay, horror or not. It's a blast and just a ton of fun. And I think for, as Casey said, for younger audiences, for families, like this is a really good horror gateway. So yeah, keep it.
All right. Yeah, despite what was said earlier, Hocus Pocus no longer the only gateway horror on this list. The Mummy stays at number 9. All right, back to Blake for number 8. All right, again, another Blake pick. I don't think you're going to be surprised about this. This is another Criterion Collection title, and one that actually just entered the collection like last Tuesday as we're recording this. Blake has picked from 1997 Cure.
This is maybe one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen in my life. Cure is all about hypnotizing the audience and like making them feel like they've literally traveled dimensions. And so Cure is about this detective who is investigating these murders, who they have no link at all, other than every person who's committed the murders has no recollection of ever doing it. They said they met some guy, and then the next thing they know, they're killing someone. And they about midway through the movie, you find out who it is, and this guy is now trying to hypnotize the detective, and it just sort of goes from there. Like, this doesn't sound like a horror movie, but like it's the way that the movie is shot and edited, where like the sound design, everything, it just makes you feel like you yourself are being hypnotized. And you sort of like fall under the spell of this guy as he sort of like mundanely talks, and you slowly fall under the spell. And I will also say Cure has one of the absolute best endings to a movie I've ever seen. I don't know. It's really hard to describe like how this works as a horror movie without like experiencing it, because it's all about how you intake the movie as it's being presented to you. It's very quiet. Like you'll be watching it and there's like behind you there'll be like drops of water dripping, and moments of sudden bursts of violence. And I just think this is one of the great horror movies that now, thankfully, because of Criterion, it's going to be discovered and people can be overtaken by its hypnosis.
All right, Blake making the case for Cure at number 8. Andy, I will start with you on this one.
Not gonna veto it. I knew it was gonna be here. This is a Blake pick, and I mean that with sheer adoration.
Not offended.
Yeah, this is a movie that I've seen, I liked, but didn't have the deep appreciation that Blake has for it. But one that I'm aching to watch again with the Criterion release. So I'm not going to veto it just because I know how passionate Blake is about this movie, and I know that it is there's a lot of good here, and I know it's haunting. It's a very haunting movie, and I remember the feeling, whether or not I remember the plot of the movie, I remember the haunting feeling, just kind of in the pit of my stomach that this movie leaves you with. So yeah, I'm going to keep it on the list. Not going to veto it.
All right, Casey.
Yeah, this is a movie I fully expected to be on this list. Back when Andy and Blake first did a 90s killer countdown, like, I don't know, maybe it was like the first 3 or 4 episodes of the killer countdown we ever did was the 90s. And Blake played this, I think, like top 5 out of the top 8 list. So I was fully expecting this to be on here. I still have not seen it. But this, like Andy said, is a Blake movie, and I expected it to be here, and I expected it to be in the top 10. So absolutely no stabbing necessary for this one.
All right, and Sam.
To what Casey said. I have not seen this. I remember listening to that killer countdown, thinking this was interesting, and putting it on my watch list. And like Casey, since then I have not actually watched it. So I'm looking forward to actually doing that. Maybe
shows how much me and Sam actually listen to Blake's recommendations. Jeez,
it is on the Criterion channel right now if you want to check it out too.
I might need a password for that.
I got you, Sam.
Okay, because I do want to check it out. I know they've got some cool stuff, especially this month. But yeah, no, I do want to watch this because I looked it up when you guys first did the killer countdown one, and it sounds very interesting and kind of up my alley. I like that detective noir kind of stuff, especially when it's mixed with horror,
it's all dread and atmosphere, like it's just sort of like how the movie presents itself as opposed to like what it is about.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Sam adding another Blake pick to his Letterboxd watch list this evening. 3 in total so far, as I'm checking this. All right, Cure stays at number 8, and Sam has the number 7 pick.
I am going to continue with Blake's theme of overwhelming dread.
All right.
Baby geniuses. All right.
All right, and we have another major Oscar winner on this list from the year 1990. Sam has picked Rob Reiner's Misery.
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys know I'm a big Stephen King fan, and Misery is one of his most intense and maybe even most prophetic novel, maybe even more so than Carrie. But the movie, which is directed by fantastic King adapter Rob Reiner, who also did Stand By Me, and just a whole host of other things. Rob Reiner needs to be on a list of great directors. He might not have that like signature style you can nail down, but he made so many classics, and Misery is one of those. And it's largely because of James Caan and Kathy Bates, who just put in two performances that are just, without either of them, this movie doesn't work, because this movie is totally focused on both of them. It deals with toxic fandom, with Kathy Bates kidnapping James Caan, who's an author of a popular book series. She reads his manuscript while he's healing up from a car crash, and she doesn't like how it ends. So she tortures him until he writes the ending that she wants. Halloween ends, haters. That's how it's done. Quit with your online petition, you whiny babies. Just tie David Gordon Green down to a bed and break his ankle like the good toxic fans you are. Yeah, I mean, what can you say about Misery? I mean, the I forget what there's an actual term for it, but the scene where she takes a sledgehammer to his ankles is shot and edited in such a way that you think you see more than you really do. And it's one of the most effective scenes in any movie. I still remember the first time I watched this. I actually watched it up in my grandparents' bedroom at a family gathering. I just wanted to get away. I saw it on the shelf. I popped it in the VHS player. And by the time it was done, I was probably like, I don't know, 10 years old. And my whole body was just trembling by the end of it, because I was so just glued in to what was going on screen. It's just one of the most tense movie going experience. Well, I guess I didn't go to the movies, but you know what I mean. It's just an intense watch, and I love it. I think it's one of the best King adaptations. I think it's top tier Rob Reiner. So, and Kathy Bates is just bravo, Kathy Bates. So yes. Yeah, Misery.
Best Actress Oscar winner Kathy Bates for Misery, yep. Because sometimes the Academy recognizes horror. Yeah. Not often, but sometimes. Sometimes,
and that's another thing with Carrie. It's another common thread that it has with Carrie. At least Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie got nominated for that one.
Yep,
so.
They sure did. All right, Sam putting Misery at number 7. Blake, we'll start with you on this one.
Really good movie. That's all I got. I like this movie a lot. I haven't seen it for a long time. So.
All right, succinct and to the point. Thank you, Blake. Andy.
Mm-hmm. I am so glad that this movie got played. Well done, Sam. I had this on my short list, and when I kind of started shifting things around, I was like, I'm not gonna play it. Oh man, I hope it makes it on here. And then to kind of see it in the top 10, awesome. I think this movie is fantastic. This is one of my favorite Stephen King experiences. Like, I think we all kind of have those moments where we find a way to connect with Stephen King. And, you know, for me, watching the It miniseries, watching the Stand miniseries kind of pushed me to explore more. And I saw this movie and I read this book, and I was just so locked into it and so terrified at a very young age, and just adore this one. So yeah, great pick. Misery, excellent. Glad to see it in the top 10.
All right, and Casey.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that I wrote down on my list of potentially 20 movies that could make it, but it was one I was never going to play myself. It was one of those movies where I'm like, if someone else plays this, awesome, cool, should be on this list. But with the 5 picks I have, it just doesn't have a place in that for it. So I'm glad you played it, Sam. Should be on this list. It's one of the best King adaptations. I'm glad we have a King movie on here too. It's nice to have that, especially in the 90s when it was kind of filled with the miniseries Kings that are not eligible for this. It's nice to have a proper big screen adaptation on this list. So I'm glad it's on here. And I just rewatched the sledgehammer to the foot scene with the Shudder's 100 scariest movie moments. And I was like, God, I need to rewatch Misery. It's been a while. I love this movie. Should probably watch it again here around spooky season. But yeah, glad it's on this list.
Yeah.
All right, Misery survives at number 7. Andy, you have the number 6 pick.
It's getting tough, guys, because there are some movies that I really want to see on this list. And being kind of stuck after this in the number one position, I don't know. So I'm going to play this one, and if anybody vetoes it to move it higher, cool. But if not, that's cool too. But I'm putting it here.
All right. Andy has sent me his pick for the number 6 slot. Another title from the golden year of 1999. Andy has selected The Blair Witch Project.
Oh, I completely forgot about this movie.
For me, this is the complete opposite of forgetting it. This is one I can't get out of my head. This is the, while not really the first found footage film, this is the seminal found footage film. This is the one that really made it such a thing, and the marketing around it made it such a thing. And then you go to the theater and you kind of experience this, and you have the camp of people who are like, oh, that was boring and it made me sick, and I don't know, I didn't think it was really scary. And then there are the people that really got invested into what was happening, because the fear in this movie is not necessarily what you see, it's what you feel. And just that sense of dread throughout the entire movie, that these kids could be at risk at any point in time. I was terrified the first time I saw it in theaters, and I saw it a second time and I got that other feeling. The one was like, oh, there's not really a lot that happens in this movie. But then you watch it, you go back around again, you watch it again, you're like, oh my God, I love this movie. I love how it ends. I love just the journey that we go on. I think that Heather's performance, especially, it's hard to call these performances because of how fucked with they were during the making of the movie. But I think that there are iconic moments in this movie, and Heather's kind of plea towards the end of the movie, where she apologizes for getting everybody involved in this, is a gut punch of a scene that really just stuck with me. Yeah, Blair Witch Project. It's one for me that would be in the top 5, but I want to make sure it gets on here. So I'm using it with my second to last pick, because I have, I don't know, maybe something else that I want at number 1. I don't know.
All right, Blair Witch Project at number 6. Sam, we'll start with you.
I mean, when we decided that we were going to do a 90s countdown, there were 2 movies that instantly popped into my head. This is one of them. I was 6 years old when this movie came out. I missed the theater experience of going into this completely blind, but I was also lucky enough to experience it before I had really gotten into horror. One of my friends set me up with it, said we were watching a documentary. I asked him, why are we watching a documentary? This is stupid. He goes, no, trust me, like, this is a cool one. You're going to like this. And I was so scared through this movie. Like, to this day, I'm still kind of like, fuck you, but also thanks for giving me that experience. You know what I mean? Like, oh, because it's terrifying. And then the credits rolled and I was like, wait a minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, never mind. Okay. But yeah, this movie is just, the confession at the end is, I think, the standout scene to me. One of the most well acted moments in a horror movie, and a horror movie that defied everything logically that you need to make a movie. They didn't really have a script. They didn't have sets. They didn't even really have actors. They just kind of grabbed a couple of people who had never really done anything before. And that's insane to me. They captured lightning in a bottle with this. And yeah, I love this movie. If I had a veto, I might actually veto this to play it higher, but.
All right, Casey.
Okay, so this is the conundrum I'm running into. The Blair Witch Project is my number 1 1990s horror movie. I love this movie. I adore this movie. I think it's one of the best horror movies of all time, in terms of just being a pure visceral horror experience. That's this movie. It's filled with kind of everything I love about this genre. I grew up watching the found footage era. Like, the big explosion after Paranormal Activity was like my prime, like, getting into horror years. So found footage was kind of all over that in the 2010s, the very early 2010s. So Blair Witch fell right into that as the godfather of those movies. And so I absolutely love this movie. I love the sequel too. I think the sequel is a very underrated gem. The Adam Wingard one has diminishing returns every time I watch that movie, which is kind of a bummer. But again, the magic of this movie is so many different elements. One, the marketing of it, of presenting it as this kind of documentary movie where these kids actually did go missing, and playing that off, having the sci-fi mockumentary that aired right around the same time, I think is just genius marketing on behalf of the team behind this. I mean, I have an entire shelf on my movie section that is literally just Blair Witch movies and memorabilia and novels. So I love this movie, but I don't think I'm going to move it higher. I only have 5 and 4, and for me, if I was going to bump it up, it would have to be into that top 3 spot for me to make it feel a little bit like it's worth stabbing this movie to get it a little higher. But it has to be on this list. Number 6 is it's a good consensus spot for it, but still, I mean, it's my favorite horror movie of the 90s, but I think there are probably maybe 3 or 4 other movies that can fit into that top spot.
All right. And Blake.
Yeah, I think this is a great movie. I have not seen it since it first came out, so I don't have much to say about it. I will talk a little bit about just how big this movie was when it came out. I was about 15 or 16, and I don't know how it played for the other older guys in this chat, but like I had people who like they didn't believe that it was a real thing, and I had people who did believe it was a real thing. And there there's all this like hullabaloo about like, well, I think it's real. I think it really happened. And I think it's just a movie. And like, this was a movie that would just be put that like you go to a party and someone just grab the VHS and throw it in and no one would know what was happening. And then, you know, when you get to these final sequences, it just sort of like leaves you cold. And it like, you could never do the Blair Witch today. There's just no way. And I just haven't seen it in a long time, so like its importance to me isn't that big, but it's just hard to deny like when this movie came out just how big it was, how everyone was talking about it, like all the movie critics, the general public in general was just sort of was talking about just like the validity of it. And I it's hard to deny the power of this movie when it came out.
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say I remember I saw it in theaters like opening weekend at this small like indie theater in north of Dallas, and it was just everyone was so like connected. There was a line around the theater to wait to get in to see it. It was such a big deal because we were just nobody knew what to expect. And you know, you had the part of the audience that was like, this is real, you have to watch this is crazy, and then the other part who's like, I don't buy this for a second. And it was just, but you could hear a pin drop like throughout the whole movie because everyone was so locked in to what was happening. And it's as a cinematic experience, as a just a movie going experience, it's up there on the list of something pretty special.
I know that like there's a joke in our group about how like there's a couple of us who love VHS movies and there's a couple of us who really don't. But if someone were to be like, Blair Witch absolutely needs to be seen on a VHS, like if there's one movie that needs to be seen on VHS, to me it's like the Blair Witch Project. That's the one I'm like, yeah, I'll grant you that one. So
yeah. And when we were talking about it in the chat, this is that exact movie that I was talking about.
Yeah.
I bought this on iTunes a few years ago and pulled it up on the Apple TV app of my Roku, and it just didn't feel right watching it. It was glossy, and like I was just like, no, you have to pop a shitty VHS into your VCR that very well might eat your tape at any given moment to fully experience the Blair Witch Project. Mm-hmm. That's that extra layer of tension, being like, oh God, is this going to be the last time I'm able to play this tape? It's wonderful.
Oh, memories and nostalgia. All right. All right. The Blair Witch Project stays at number 6. So,
Man, I can't believe it's that low. This list is wild.
and we still have only 5 spots to go, and I'm very curious what we're gonna get crammed in here, and more likely what's gonna miss the cut. So to recap where we are right now, number 20, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 19, Hocus Pocus. Number 18, Frankenhooker. Number 17, Body Parts. Number 16, Sleepy Hollow. Number 15, Bride of Chucky. Number 14, Dead Alive. Number 13, Lake Placid. Number 12, Cube. Number 11, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Number 10, The Silence of the Lambs. Number 9, The Mummy. Number 8, Cure. Number 7, Misery. And number 6, The Blair Witch Project. And just to recap, we still have 3 vetoes on the table from Casey, Blake, and Andy. Sam, the only person that has played their veto as of yet. And the only other thing I'll do is I'll provide a brief update to Blake's prediction list. Blake only got 1 movie right in 6 through 10, and that was The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, wow.
I will say I did predict The Mummy and then removed it.
Yes. Blake, 2 days after sending me this list, Blake sent me, replace The Mummy with Child's Play 2, which did not work out for him.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. The final 5. Casey has pick number 5. All right, and it's been a while since we've had a major franchise on this list, but here we go. If I'm not mistaken, this is also our first repeating director on this list. So from 1998, Casey has selected Halloween H2O.
Halloween H2O. Steve Miner is back on this list. The best Steve Miner horror movie of the 1990s, much better than Lake Placid. One of my favorite sequels to the Halloween franchise, Halloween H2O. People, right now, the talk of the town is Halloween ends. And for me, Halloween really ended in Halloween H2O from 1998. I think it's the best performance Jamie Lee Curtis has in this entire series. I love the arc of Laurie Strode in this movie. Obviously, we are set 20 years later, and she is off at this private school teaching, where her son, Josh Hartnett, with the most Hartnett hair of the 1990s, is there. And I think he's a fun Laurie Strode kid. He's not my favorite of the 3 timeline Laurie Strode kids. But I think he's a solid number 2. And I think him and his friends are fun characters. What's that?
He's a number 2, all right.
Yeah, number 2, right after Danielle Harris. Yeah, I think the opening of this movie, to the Mr. Sandman song, you get a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt getting an ice skate to the face to open this movie, and I think that's an incredible kill and one of the most underrated of the franchise. I also think Michael is pretty damn scary in this movie, and I think that's what some of the Halloween sequels miss, is not just the brute force, the stabbing strength of Michael Myers, it's the creepiness factor. Is Michael creepy? Is he just this guy in a mask staring at you from outside your window? That's Michael Myers to me, and I think this movie really nails that. You have kind of the homages to the original movie with him looking in the windows. You also have, I think, the better of the 2 big bathroom scenes we get again in 2018. I think we get the scarier version here, where you have the mom and the child in the bathroom, and Michael comes and steals the keys because he still knows how to drive 20 years later, because he somehow knew how to drive back in 78 too. Yeah, I think this movie's a blast. It is the best. I think it's the best way to end Michael Myers that they did, and then completely threw it away a couple years later for Halloween Resurrection, with Laurie Strode just decapitating Michael at the end of this movie, which I think is, I mean, how can you get more definitive than that?
All right. Casey making the case for Michael Myers and Halloween H2O at number 5. Andy, we'll start with you on this one.
this movie doesn't exist anymore. It's not a real timeline. No, yeah, I'm not gonna veto it. It's fine, but yeah, I think the undoing of it hurts it a little bit, which is not fair. Like, it's not fair for this movie that somebody decided to retcon it. Just like it's not fair that Halloween 5 ruins Halloween 4 a little bit. But yeah, I think this is fine. I'm trying to really play the game here. And while I don't love this movie, it is definitely one of the best Halloween movies. So definitely on that list of 13 movies. So I will leave it on that list. So yeah, this is fine. I'm not gonna put up a fight for this one.
All right, Blake.
This is one of my least favorite Halloween movies. I don't think it's bad, but I watched it a couple years ago and I thought I was just really bored with it. So I don't have much to say about it really. But I'm not going to veto it.
All right, Blake succinct again. We will go to Sam.
I despise this movie.
It's insane.
I genuinely this is one of my least favorite Halloween movies. I love Michael Myers. Which Michael do you think is the most terrifying? The one that has the cheapo mask, or the one that has the CGI mask, or the one that has the even different mask? Because there's 6.
I like the blonde mask in this one. I think it's a nice change that he's whipping out different masks throughout this movie.
It's the 90s.
I think this movie's boring. I think nothing happens for the first 70 minutes, and then all of a sudden Laurie Strode hijacks an ambulance, and it's okay. By that point, I'm so checked out. I don't care. I don't like this movie. It's not better than Lake Placid. Lake Placid deserves to be.
Also, I need to throw it out here because I didn't yet. The Kevin Williamson talk of this movie of how much did he write, how much didn't he write? I mean, there's very clear this has some Kevin Williamson influence, whether it's just because Scream had come out and was super popular. He also did do a run over the script, and you can definitely tell that throughout this movie. And I think he definitely beefed up those teenager characters,
but not well enough. It's just not enough. I don't know. At this point, Williamson was stretched so thin, and I feel like you can feel it in this script, and you can feel it in I Know What You Did Last. There's just a stretch of Williamson scripts where he's so overworked because he's working on so many projects. And I feel like this is one of them. I think this is one of his weakest scripts. This is one of the weakest Halloween movies for me. If I had a stab still, I would use it here. But it's still worth it because I got Bride of Chucky on this list. So, but no, H2O is not my movie.
All right. Despite the largely negative comments from the panel, Halloween H2O has survived in the top 5. So we have a Freddy, we have a Michael. The question is, will somebody play Jason Goes to Hell in the top 4 to get the Holy Trinity on this list? The answer, of course, is no. But
I can do it. I will say this: Halloween H2O so far is the most 90s movie. It is very much a 90s horror movie. When I think of 1990s, I feel like the style of Halloween H2O is kind of what that decade defined the most that it could define itself with something, because as we can tell, the 90s were all over the place. But yeah, I think this is the most in line with what our preconceived notions of what that decade of horror was like.
All right. And with that, Casey has his final pick of the evening at number 4. He's also giving me scripting instructions on this. So Casey has selected from 1993 the aforementioned Jason Goes to... Casey has selected Tremors.
Yeah, Jason Goes to Hell sucks.
It's so bad.
It is truly bad. But movie that is not bad and deserves its place in the top 5 on this list is Tremors. Tremors. What is there to be said about this movie that already hasn't been said. It is the better version of what we had on this list earlier with Lake Placid. It is a fun throwback to monster movie mayhem, and it is just a great movie overall. A great script for a monster movie about these giant worm-like creatures underneath the ground and the desert, that if you step and make a sound, they'll come after you and eat you. What a great B-movie premise that has an incredible script behind it, an all-star cast, young Kevin Bacon in this, Fred Ward. We get the introduction of one of my favorite horror characters, Burt Gummer, in this movie. I think he is so much fun. That who would have thought back when this movie came out that Burt Gummer, this side character who's hanging out with Reba McEntire, would carry this franchise for another 25 plus years, all while having Jamie Kennedy as a kid in the middle there. Who would have thought that back in the day? But yeah, Tremors, incredible movie. I think all of us had the chance to see this at the State Theater
Nope.
not that long
I missed
ago.
it.
Oh, guys,
The
I
guy who
watched it
picked
at
it
home,
didn't go.
well, I will say you guys missed out because it was incredible to see on the big screen if you haven't seen it before. So it ever plays on the big screen. It's such a fun big screen movie to watch with the crowd. Perfect crowd pleaser. Absolutely deserves a place on this list. Yeah, Tremors needs to be top 5, I think.
All right. Casey putting Tremors at number 4, a movie that just barely makes this list because it came out on January 19th, 1990. So just making it into the decade, fortunately. Sam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this movie is this is like a bona fide 5-star banger. Much like Town, this movie is perfection. Yeah, I love this one. There's not a whole lot more to say about it, but just a collective cast of like some great character actors that really elevate this. It's a perfect blend of comedy and tension. Like there are genuinely, I don't know if I would necessarily say frightening moments in this, but there are sequences of very intense, like, oh my God, I'm on the edge of my seat. What's going to happen? There's children in peril. Just this is a perfect movie. Everything is constructed so well, from the scares to the characters to the just brilliant practical effects that they are able to showcase in broad daylight because they actually put in the work and made something really cool. Yeah, Tremors is an all-timer. This could be top 3 for me, but yeah, I love this movie.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, I have no arguments. I watched this at home when everybody was watching it in the theater because I don't remember why I wasn't able to make it out that night. But yeah, it's a ton of fun. Like just a fun, silly movie, and I think having that represented by one that's really well made and has a fun cast, I'm okay with that. Like I just think this is a fun movie. So yeah, Tremors number 4, cool. No problem with it.
All right, Blake.
I'm gonna echo the fun sentiments that have been used already. It's just a lot of fun. Kevin Bacon's great. I love Fred Ward. I will say I like this movie less and less as I watch it, but I still have a lot of fond memories as a kid, like watching it on TNT, like on a Saturday night. It played so many freaking times. So yeah, this is a good pick. I'm pretty sure I predicted it too. So
You did. You've got another one on the board.
Yep.
So you are up to 4. All right. All right. And with that, let's just keep it going. Sam, you have the number 3 pick. All right. Another franchise starter being brought here from 1992. Sam has selected Bernard Rose's Candyman.
So Candyman is one of the absolute best slashers ever made. I remember watching this bootlegged on YouTube in like those 10-minute parts back when I was in high school, and just having the absolute living shit scared out of me. And then I didn't watch this movie for a very long time until my first guest spot on Backlot 605 when I revisited it for Clive Barker month. And my God, this movie doesn't just hold up, it gets better with rewatches. I've seen this 3 times, I think, in the last 2 years because that rewatch before the episode just like it cemented it. I'm like, this is incredible. Tony Todd as Candyman is, I mean, he's as good as he's as synonymous with Candyman to me as Robert Englund is to Freddy. And even though the new one doesn't completely like he's not really in it much, his presence is felt. And I just think it's a legendary performance that is going to have ripple effects throughout horror for years to come. Yeah, this movie's tremendous. That's about it. I mean, the social commentary, like it's a horror movie that actually has something to say, and it says it in a very effective and very brutal and gruesome way. Which I mean, you guys know me. You've seen my last few picks. I like fun horror, and this isn't fun, but it's so magnetic that I keep getting drawn back into it. It's just tremendous. So when I'm looking for a good gut punch movie, this is the one I pull off the shelf. So Candyman.
All right, Candyman at number 3. Casey, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a movie I had in my top 5, so I'm glad someone else played it here at number 3. I think it is one of the absolute best horror movies of the 1990s. It's one of the great slasher movies of all time, while it doesn't feel fully like a slasher movie. And I think that's one of the great magic charms of this movie, is that it is kind of this mystery drama thriller wrapped in this slasher movie. And yeah, Tony Todd, like, yeah, I think an apt comparison for that is Robert Englund to Freddy Krueger with Tony Todd to Candyman. I can't really see anyone else playing this version of Candyman ever. He's so hypnotic in the role. I think that's the best way I can describe it, is that I don't know if he's necessarily scary, or if or like Freddy or Jason, where he's like fun to watch, but he's so hypnotic of whenever he's on the screen, you can't take your eyes away, and when he's gone from the screen, his presence can still be felt throughout it. Yeah, I think it's a tremendous movie. Virginia Madsen is incredible in the lead of this movie, has some incredible cinematography. The score for Candyman is absolutely incredible. I love it. Yeah, this has to be on this list. Glad it is top 3.
All right, Blake.
I don't really have much to add. I think this is one of the great slasher movies of all time. It's a very elegant movie. I don't want to say that as a pejorative towards other horror movies. This is just a very beautiful movie to look at. It's like very well made, great camera movements, great blocking. I mean, like, also big shout out to, if you want a piece of shit schmucky guy, go for Xander Berkeley every time. So
all right, and Andy.
Yeah, this is easily one of the best. And it has one of my, like, it's a movie that will always stick with me because it has one of my like greatest nightmares as a child. Like, we watched this, I was way too young to watch this when I watched it, and I was up for weeks afterwards because it was just utterly terrifying. Yeah, but now I love this movie. I think it's so great. Yeah, really, really glad that it is so high on our list. It definitely deserves it. Fantastic film.
All right, we are now down to just 2 picks, and Blake has the number 2 selection. All right, here we go. At number 2, Blake has selected from 1993, Abel Ferreira's Body Snatchers.
yeah, this movie, like the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, has been remade at least 3 times, maybe even 4 if we count another great teen horror movie of the 90s. But my personal favorite version is the Abel Ferrara version that came out in 1993. It's the same old story as the other ones. It just takes place on a military base in Alabama, and it stars a young Gabrielle Anwar, who is her father, I believe, is in the military, moves to this base with her and her younger brother. Her stepmother, who she doesn't get along with, is played by Meg Tilly, who is, of course, Jennifer Tilly's sister. And she is wonderful, especially once her body is taken over by the aliens. And it just has all those great sequences where, like, people point and scream, kind of like Donald Sutherland did. The sequences of the bodies being mutated by these pods are so well done. There's a great for me, like a really iconic sequence when Meg Tilly says to Gabrielle Anwar, "Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna hide? We're everywhere." And it's just so terrifying. One of the great endings to a horror movie as well. I love this movie so much.
All right, Blake with Body Snatchers at number 2. Andy, we'll begin with you.
Man, okay. I have not seen this version of Body Snatchers.
I do want to say, even if you have not seen my movies, I have no problem with you vetoing it. Like, I have other backups too, so don't be afraid to do. Like, that's my rule, So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to. Yeah.
It's so tough because I've been really watching the Queer for Fear documentary series on Shudder lately, and the last one they did had to deal with involved body snatchers, and they showed clips from all of the Body Snatchers movies, and it made me throw this one on my watch list, and I'm like, okay, I've got to see this one because I love the 1978
Mm-hmm. As do I. Yes.
Oh God, yeah. I love it so much. And it was one that I just watched somewhere over the last couple of years and just fell in love with it. It's so tough. It's so tough because I don't want to veto it because I don't doubt that it's excellent. I just haven't seen it, and so I'm like, oh man. So I'm not going to. I'm not going to veto it, and it just makes it so that I need to see it sooner. That the clips that they showed on the documentary series were great, and having your kind of words to back it up make it so it's like I really need to make sure I check this out. So I will hold on to my stab and not stab anything this time.
All right, Andy is not vetoing, but will Casey veto?
So out of all of Blake's movies, I have not seen any of them. This is one of them. I also love the 78 version. I think it's incredible. I think it's one of the best of the 70s. I am really it's really eating me away that I didn't veto or stab Lake Placid, because now I'm sitting here with a stab that I want to use, because I mean I have it and I might as well use it, and I should have used it back then. Yeah, I'm going to use it now because I just want to see what Blake plays instead. It's not a slight against the movie or anything like that. I just want to see what Blake plays instead.
All right. We have a veto played. We are going to mark that down. So let's see what Blake provides for his backup. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
You got what you asked for. He's going even deeper here.
Deeper, but I think it's not like a fuck you pick. I think this is a legit great movie. So,
all right, from 1997, Blake has selected Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue.
Yeah, Perfect Blue is going to be the only animated movie we have on the list, unless Andy vetoes it, which I mean, that's okay too, I guess, if that happens. But yeah, Perfect Blue is sort of like, how do I describe it? It's just such a
incredible.
It's an anime from Japan. It's about a girl in a pop group, like kind of like a Destiny's Child, where she kind of gets bored with her life and she wants to branch out as an artist, and she wants to be an actress. And this does not sit well with part of the community. Even one person goes as far as to stalk her and maybe even try to kill her. And again, this is going to sound sort of like, oh, this is really in a horror movie. Again, this is just sort of like in how it's presented. There are just sequences where you don't even know it's reality. Because it's animated, the director can put the camera wherever he wants to and sort of like do these incredible like shots. Darren Aronofsky loves this movie so much that he bought the rights to it just so he could literally like rip off shots in like Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan. As we're recording right now, I think this is on Shudder. So if you want to watch it, I think it's on there. It's only 80 minutes, flies by really quickly. Just a ton of like terrifying sequences with its editing, with its like quote unquote cinematography. I watched it late at night, I think maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, and it really floored me how just scary the whole thing was, with this guy stalking this woman, gets into her apartment. And I think this movie is really, really ahead of its time in terms of like how a movie is presented and made. And I think a lot of like movies that came out after it, not even animated, but just like actual like studio big budget live action movies, sort of took the approach of this movie and used it. And this kind of feels like ground zero for those types of psychological thrillers. So yeah, I'm gonna do Perfect Blue.
All right. Since Andy has the only veto that can be used yet, I will start with him.
My reaction was not out of frustration, but out of just sheer incredulity, because this is an inspired pick. Yeah, I love this movie. And it's just something that's so crazy to see so high on this list, because it's really something special. And it's as haunting as movies get. Like it is just psychologically scarring. And I was going through, because you were talking, I was going through trying to find my Letterboxd review of it, and it deals with sexual manipulation of fame, for fame, and it's just uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable movie, and it's really interesting that an animated movie can make you feel the way that this movie does. So yeah, to have an animated entry on this list is pretty incredible. Number two though.
I've got other movies if you want to veto.
Part of me just wants to veto it to see what comes next. Like it's a game now. It's a game to just get Blake talking about movies.
Okay.
Oh God, I don't know. Oh Jesus. I don't get to save this. I don't get to save this stab. It's not like I get to hold on to it for the next episode of Killer Countdown for next year. Blake. All right, Blake, I'm gonna stab it. What else do you got?
Oh my Lord.
Again, I love this movie, and everybody, if you have not seen this, Perfect Blue is wow.
So, okay,
since it moved to Shudder.
At this point, I have movies that are like 15 to 20 picks.
Sure.
So,
we're blowing up the list.
Okay, I wasn't gonna do this. I wasn't gonna play this movie, but now I kind of. Oh gosh, the one movie I want to play, I feel like Andy's gonna like. That type of movies Andy's gonna play at number one, so I don't want to play it so close, but it's by the same directors, so I'm kind of like really stuck. I guess I just got to do it. So okay, well, this is for me. This is a 15. 15 through 20 movie, but I guess it made it this far. So, all right, I'm doing it.
All right, and Blake has done it. He has given me the pick for his third number 2 selection of the evening. Blake has selected another repeat director on this list.
Say the director first, and then
Yes, I am working up to it. Blake has selected from director Wes Craven 1991's The People Under the Stairs.
Yeah. So when Andy played New Nightmare, I was like, all right, I'm not playing this movie because I didn't want 3 Wes Craven movies on there. Probably headed that direction, but that's okay. This is probably my favorite 90s Wes Craven horror movie. I love this movie. This sort of kind of sits in the same vein with Candyman, where it's kind of about a gentrification of a slummed area of a major city. It's about these 2 guys. I think it's 2 or 3 people. One of them is Ving Rhames. The other one is a younger kid. I don't know the actor's name. They're basically going to break into this house
the Mighty Ducks kid.
Mighty Ducks,
oh, okay. Still don't know his name. They're breaking into this like really old, like almost like a brownstone type house in the middle of like a slum, and owned by some white people. And so there's a little bit of like, well, these people came into our neighborhood. They live here. They owe us, and they kind of hear stories about treasure buried in this house. So Ving Rhames and this young kid, he's gotta be like 10 or 11 years old, break into this house, and then it turns out that this guy and his wife are complete psychopaths. I'm trying to think of the actor's name. He's in Everett McGill, I think is his name. He is this lunatic who dresses up in sadomasochistic bondage attire, and he runs around with a shotgun, kills someone, and this kid has to sort of like survive in this house, and he ends up finding out that this couple, they keep people in the basement. One of which is played by Sean Whalen, who's one of my favorite character actors, and it's sort of like this fairy, like a modern day fairy tale of a kid who is in this like really deep situation against an authoritarian type figure of another race, specifically to this movie, and it's sort of like about the dynamics of like how in this rundown area of town. Like there's a lot of racial issues, and Wes Craven like just ramps up the violence and gore based upon that. I just think it's a great movie. I wouldn't have played it this high, but like I feel like the stuff I would have played, you guys really would have hated, and so I just thought this my only pick that I kind of had to do.
All right, Blake making his case for The People Under the Stairs. Casey, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think this is my second favorite Wes Craven movie of the 90s. I think we'll talk about the other one next, hopefully. But yeah,
the veto, just to let you know.
I really like that this made our list, and I'm okay with it being at number 2. Yeah, everything Blake said is on point. I've only seen this the one time, and I was kind of surprised watching this how much of this I was not expecting from Wes Craven, because it does have a lot of actual like themes to it. And Wes Craven to me kind of feels like a guy who does fun horror movies that don't necessarily have, a lot to say about society, really. They're just kind of fun horror movies. But this really lets Wes shine that side of his filmography that we didn't get to see a whole lot of, at least in his mainstream horror movies. So yeah, I'm really glad this made the list. I think this is one of the 20 best horror movies of the 90s, and it's just kind of crazy that Craven will he has such a great repertoire of movies that came out this decade. So it's nice to have some recognition for People Under the Stairs.
All right, Sam.
Yeah, this is a great pick for. I mean, I really don't see a problem with this being number 2. This is a really good Wes Craven flick, and I feel like it's kind of underrated. it's got more of a budget on it than his like early stuff, like Last House on the Left and Hills Have Eyes, but it has that same kind of biting American commentary that those have, just in a more palatable fashion, I guess.
A polished, more polished than those are. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And in that instance, I think like this movie is a massive success, and it's actually genuinely terrifying at times. Yeah, I love Wes, man. I'm kind of glad that he's been on this list so much, because as I was watching New Nightmare today, like his scene that he has in his house with Heather, I'm like, God, I miss Wes Craven. You know, I just miss that guy. I wish he was still making movies. I don't think he ever lost it. So, yeah, absolutely okay with this being my number 2. This is a cool pick.
All right, Andy.
I have not seen this since I was younger. And honestly, I should have stuck with Perfect Blue because I feel more excited about Perfect Blue. But everybody else seems to really like this one. So yay, People Under the Stairs. It's something I've wanted to rewatch because I haven't watched it since it came out. Just haven't got around to it yet. And I guess now is the time, since we have put our stamp of approval on it.
All right. And with that, we are down to the final pick of the evening, the number 1 pick, which again was christened to Mr. Andy Heller. And I think we all knew where this was going this evening, so let's just get it out there. At number 1, Andy has selected from director Wes Craven, it's Scream. It's Scream.
So when can I play my veto? Like now, or do I have to wait for Andy to explain the movie before I use my veto, or how does this work?
Well, we'll give him the courtesy.
Okay.
Let him make his case before you slam it down.
Okay.
All right. So Scream. Scream has become its own entity, and it feels like, I said earlier that Halloween H2O feels like the most 90s movie on the list. No, Scream Now is the most 90s movie on this list. It brought like the whole pop culture connection to horror that, everything. It has really kind of redefined the genre to an extent. It has influenced people. It has, become kind of our generation's or I guess I don't know what generation I'm in, but it's kind of been like that franchise that really is like the benchmark of mainstream horror, and it typically has done so relatively well for 5 films. I think there's some give and take there, where some has done better than others, but I think that it's been a world that's created some really memorable characters, be it from the original Ghost Faces to Sidney Prescott, who is just like Neve Campbell is wonderful in these movies, and I think she is the perfect person to cheer for as we go on this journey with her. You've got Gail Weathers, you've got Dewey, who made me like David Arquette, Jamie Kennedy, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich. I'll just name all their names: Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard. I just think this is such a fun cast, and it hit at a time where it really became something special. It was something that everybody was aching for, a return to horror that was fun, that the majority of culture could kind of latch onto. And I think, now it's a legacy. It's something that everybody really connects with, and I think it's the defining horror movie of the 90s. And whether it stays at number 1 or not, I guess we'll see. But for me, I think I feel like you can't do this countdown without having Scream somewhere near the top of the list, probably at the top, which is what I was planning on doing all along.
All right, let's see if by chance Blake will use his veto on this title.
Listen, guys, I'm a psychopath, okay? But even I cannot veto Scream off the list. I mean, this movie represents the 90s, like more so than anything. It felt like the 90s, and I know we named a bunch of great movies pre-Scream that came out in the 90s, but I felt like it needed a lot of help, and Scream was that like Pulp Fiction energized shot to the heart that the genre needed. I think this is the hippest movie that's ever been made. Like, if you look at like the posters and the advertising and the characters and all of that, like the dialogue, like this is the coolest movie ever made. And it's all, you know, like mostly thanks to, you know, like this near 60-year-old guy who just took this script that is arguably the hippest thing that's ever been written for Hollywood, and you know, made stars out of all these people. Nev Campbell is my Scream queen. I think she's the best, even though she was completely wasted in the last absolute garbage entry of this series. You know, like Jamie Kennedy's great. Like one of the few times he's great. Matthew Lillard is like, I love Matthew Lillard. I think he's great in this. Yeah, I don't know what else to say really. Like, I think this is just one of the great, you know, horror movies ever made.
All right, Casey.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do a 1990s horror list and you're gonna have a number one pick, Scream is kind of the go-to definitive number one pick. Yeah, it's one of the great slasher movies of all time, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this movie is that horror in the 90s, and we've kind of shown that on our entire list because this comes out in 96. So we have 6 years prior to this that we still have great horror movies, Oscar-winning movies in that list. But it's just the fact that slasher movies at this time were at a very weird spot, especially coming off the 80s where it was like 5 a year that you could say, yeah, that was a really fun slasher movie. Here we are in 96 and you're getting, you know, Child's Play 3, no offense to Child's Play 3, or you're getting Hellraiser, whatever. You're getting these kind of schlocky or straight to video movies. And then Scream comes along and has this just super hip, super tight script. Wes Craven, a staple of the genre that really revitalizes his career here, and really is a guy that kind of just strikes lightning in a bottle every time he kind of enters the genre. And I mean, I don't think we give Wes Craven enough credits as one of the greatest, and I could argue the greatest horror director of all time. I mean, this list shows it. We have 3 out of our 20 movies are directed by this one man, and you can see his stamp on all 3 of those movies. I'm also glad that our ratio to Steve Miner to Wes Craven movies is now at a better balance than it would have been. Yeah, this movie's incredible. One of the great movies of the 1990s. One of my favorite horror movies ever.
All right, and Sam.
To start off, I'd like to point out that you were the one that tipped the scales towards Steve Miner, Casey. So that's not on me. Yeah, Scream is like one of the most definitive slashers of all time. I love this movie. Everything that you guys said is spot on. It's the most lightning in a bottle movie I've ever seen, and Wes just really nailed it with this one. Kevin Williamson, just his script. I mean, you can't have a great movie without a great script. It all started with what Kevin Williamson wrote, and the installments that don't have Williamson, you feel that, like you really do. Mm-hmm. But also, as much as I liked the reboot, but it's not the same without Wes Craven behind the camera. It's just not, and it's never going to be. Like, Scream is just him at the height of his powers. This is maybe the best slasher movie ever made. As much as I love Halloween, this honestly might be, like, if I was to get someone into the slasher genre, this would be the movie I'd start them with, because it's undeniably just, like, my mom could watch Scream. My mom, who does not like slashers, could watch and have a good time with it. You know, like, it's a movie that just knocks down boundaries. Yeah. And the fact that it bombed in its opening weekend, but then just didn't drop at all at the box office for months, and somehow ended up becoming a box office story just because word of mouth was getting around. That's insane. That's insane. It's one of the it's one of the greatest box office success stories of all time, and it is a box office success for a reason, and that is it connected with so many people and still does to this day. So yeah, there is no other movie that I would want topping this list. Although I almost played it at number 3 because I was not sure where we were going with it.
I would have vetoed it.
All right. Well, there you have it. We have Scream where it belongs at number 1. And that wraps up this 1990s killer countdown. First, just going to recap the full list. Number 20, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 19, Hocus Pocus. Number 18, Frankenhooker. Number 17, Body Parts. 16, Sleepy Hollow. 15, Bride of Chucky. 14, Dead Alive. 13, Lake Placid. 12, Cube. 11, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. 10, The Silence of the Lambs. 9, The Mummy. 8, Cure. 7, Misery. 6, The Blair Witch Project. 5, Halloween H2O. 4, Tremors. Number 3, Candyman. Number 2, The People Under the Stairs. And number 1, Scream. All right. Before we get into discards, I'm just going to wrap up the Blake prediction exercise. He ended up getting 6 right on his list of 15. He got New Nightmare, Frankenhooker, Silence of the Lambs, Tremors, Candyman, and Scream. Here are the 9 movies he predicted that did not make it onto this list. And these are in no order.
Sure.
Funny Games, The Craft, 7, Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight, Jacob's Ladder, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Bad Moon, From Dusk Till Dawn, and the aforementioned Child's Play 2. So there you have it.
At least Child's Play 2 is played.
True, but we're not giving partial credit for that, sadly. So, all right. Let's get into the discards here real quick. Let's begin with Casey.
Yeah, some of my discards were mentioned there. Bram Stoker's Dracula probably should be on this list. I think it's just an all-time classic horror movie, one of the great, if not the greatest Dracula adaptation ever. I also had From Dusk Till Dawn, my favorite thing involving Quentin Tarantino. The Craft I also had on there. Bad Moon, people should see Bad Moon if you haven't. Great werewolf movie. I'm one of the few people that still like I Know What You Did Last Summer, so that would at least be an honorable mention from me. If you guys would have vetoed Hocus Pocus, I would have played The Witches instead. So that would have been my alternate there. Army of Darkness, I think, I don't know if it should be a top 20, but it is definitely a very 90s pop culture movie. We talked about the best Clive Barker adaptation from the 90s and Candyman, but I think Nightbreed should at least get a shout out in honorable mentions. I also had a first time watch, The Faculty, but I think we got our Kevin Williamson fix with Scream and Halloween H2O. But man, The Faculty rules. I had never seen this movie before. I think, like, in terms of screenplay, I like The Faculties more than Scream. That might be sacrilege to say, but I think as an overall screenplay, I kind of dig it more than Scream. And then the last one is Exorcist 3, which I think has one of the best jump scares of all time.
Yeah.
But I felt weird with the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff right now, throwing that one on this list.
Yeah.
But it's a great movie nonetheless.
All right, Sam, your discards, please.
I also had Bram Stoker's Dracula and The Faculty on mine, and The Craft. The Craft is excellent. I love that movie so much. And I really like the sequel. Haters be damned. It's good. It's great, actually. I also had Wolf, the Mike Nichols werewolf movie that's essentially The Graduate, but with a werewolf. It's wonderful. I had the goth classic The Crow, which, I mean, that's just I didn't
not a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm like, God, it's horror adjacent, but it's not really
Yeah.
horror. So
Definitely a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I still wanted to give it a shout out though, because I do
Yeah.
dig that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, first time watch recent for me was Tammy and the T-Rex, which I almost put that in the place of Frankenhooker, but I couldn't because Frankenhooker's my OG. I love it. So, and then also in the vein of like the postmodern slashers, Urban Legends, just one of my absolute. And I do want to back up what Casey said. The Faculty's fucking tremendous. Robert Rodriguez directs the hell out of that movie. Yeah, it's great. It's essentially Invasion of the Body Snatchers for the screen generation, and it's dope. Yeah.
All right, Andy, your discards.
I didn't have a ton of discards actually. I did have 7. That was my biggest one. I even said on the Criterion Break that I was considering playing it. I don't think I actually named the name of it, but that was the one that I was thinking of when I was talking about that. I also had The Faculty. I love The Faculty. I think The Faculty is a ton of fun. Just a great movie. One that was really like the source of our like international debate, I didn't even get around to watching, so I still have not seen all of Ringu, so it never was actually in contention because I have not watched it all the way through. But what I've seen of it I love. I think it's great, and I love the remake. The movie that I had in the process.
Too.
What's that?
Just today. I just watched the first hour of Ring today.
Oh, nice. The movie that I was in the movie I was in the process of watching that I still have 10 minutes left would be Guillermo del Toro's Mimic, which is a ton of fun, surprisingly a ton of fun. And kind of along that same vein of like the 90s creature features, I also really like The Relic, which is just not very good, but a nice Tom Sizemore, Penelope Ann Miller like horror movie in a museum. And then the best Evil Dead movie, Army of Darkness, definitely the best of the original franchise, before before the remake came out and just knocked it out of the park. So yeah,
All right.
That's where I stand.
Agree with you there, boss.
All right, and Blake, if you somehow have any discards left, we'd like to hear those.
I have a few. Okay, so my first one is Somber, which is an art house movie from France, which I think is a terrifying movie about a serial killer. I had The Addiction, which is another Abel Ferreira movie about vampirism that I thought was an electric watch. I had Hardware from 1990, I believe, about a killer robot in a Mad Max future. It's kind of like a slasher movie. I really, really dig that movie a lot. And I have to admit, guys, I kind of feel like shit because the movie I was going to play at number 2 was The Faculty. But I didn't want to do 2 like cool hip features back to back. And now I realize that I probably should have because it best represents the decade. So I also really love The Faculty. So yeah. I guess if we're finding anything out about this show, it's that we all really recommend The Faculty.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Damn.
The best that didn't make this list.
yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, there you have it. After nearly 3 hours, we've completed this journey, and it's been a lot of fun. A real trip through the decade and just the varied amount of stuff that came out of it. So I really enjoyed this, and I'm sure you guys did too. Any final thoughts on this list in general before we go to plugs?
It's us. It's us.
Yeah.
It's our list. Very, very, very clearly this kind of with all of these kind of top 20s, it's a good representation of the people who compile the list. And yeah, this is very much our list. I see a lot of our personalities and our taste on there, and that's great. Like, I think we all clearly we all have 5 choices, so we're all equally represented, but I think it really just kind of defines who we are as horror appreciators.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how you maniacs let me play Halloween H2O in the top 5, but you did.
You know why I didn't veto it? Because I wanted to. Because you had the number 4 pick, and you could have just
Mhm.
played it there. So I didn't. I was like, "There's no point in me vetoing this." So
You did really well when you drew out my veto before playing that, because you knew that would have been the only other movie I would have vetoed.
I'll be honest. I wasn't planning on playing H2O at all until Andy played Blair Witch, and I'm like, well, I don't really have too much else
Yeah.
that I want
Yeah.
here. So.
yeah, Huh. I'll rewatch it. I'm sure I'll change my mind about it. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. So let's just get quickly into plugs here and then we'll wrap this up. You can find me on the Instagram and the Letterboxd under the username DERVDUDE. That's Derv Dude. You can also find me here on the Fat Dude Digs Flicks podcast feed from time to time as co-host of the Criterion Break podcast. We'd love to have you listen to that. We did tackle some horror in our latest episode, which dropped a couple weeks ago, as you're hearing this, on the Criterion Horror Shorts. A lot of fun watching some of that stuff, including at least one person that showed up on this top 20 list. So have a listen. Sam, we'll go to you for plugs.
Yeah, I mean, right now you can check me out at on Instagram at either Slen's Art or the Ghoul Fields, where I do my cartooning of Sally and all of her little horror misadventures. And then yeah, Casey and I have got some kind of like filmmaking stuff in the works that if we can talk about, he can tell you about.
All right, we'll go straight into Casey then.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, just at Casey Kelderman, or on Letterboxd as well, Casey Kelderman. Pretty easy to find. And then me and Sam, we are working on some horror themed projects, because of course, hopefully we'll have something shot soon, so that'll be nice to have something back at least behind the camera wise. You can check out the South Dakota Film Community Group page on Facebook. Highly recommend everybody join that, join the conversation there. There's a lot of cool things that we're trying to do here in Sioux Falls. And one of those is, since I don't ever get to plug things anymore, I'm just going to plug away here. We have a really cool event coming up on November 15th. Every month we host filmmaker workshops in the basement of Last Stop on East Side Sioux Falls. The one that we're doing November 15th, we're asking everybody who is wanting to participate to write a 2 to 3 page scene between 2 characters that we will then shoot in our December meeting. So if you have ever wanted to get your script to screen, this is your chance. Or if you've ever wanted to kind of work on a short film, this is your chance to kind of learn from some actual professionals, not myself, but from professionals like Zeke Hansen or Dominic Winnicky. So you can definitely be able to learn from some experts of the area.
All right, thank you, Casey. Blake, we'll go to you.
Yeah, short and sweet. You can find me on Letterboxd, The Real John G.
All right, nice and succinct. And finally, Andy.
So I've got the longest list of plugs because this is my network. You can find me online at Fat Dude Digs Flicks on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, YouTube, and even TikTok. Just do a search, you will find me there. Subscribe to this podcast, like this podcast, rate and review this podcast, share this podcast with your friends. We're gonna do this and have a good time, whether we have 0 listeners or we have like 100 plus listeners. I'm not aiming too high, I guess, with 100 plus, but if I ever got to 100 plus listeners on a weekly basis, I'll be very happy. But I'm going to do this show no matter what. The best way to get more listeners is with your help by sharing this with friends. Leave a review on iTunes or Spotify. And if you subscribe to this podcast, not only do you get Let's Talk About, but you also get the Criterion Break hosted by myself, Blake Ginnathan and Derrick Veurink as well, your wonderful host for the festivities this evening. Yeah, and just join in the conversation. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to be a guest, have any recommendations, send an email to fatdudedigsflicks@gmail.com. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you for that, Andy. And thank you for giving over your podcast feed so that we could have this fun little entertaining event here. It's been a blast. We haven't done one of these in quite some time, and it's been a thrill ride because these things usually are. So this has been a lot of fun to do, and hopefully for those of you who have been listening to it, I hope it's been as much of a thrill ride for you as well. So yeah, that'll do it. Hopefully this time next year we'll cook up another one of these, if not before. We'll just see how it goes. But until then, have a happy Halloween, and we'll get you next time. Bye.